Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to All India Prelims mock test paper discussion. The test was conducted yesterday, and today, as is the norm, we discuss all these questions that appeared in the test. We'll start with Polity, then Chethan sir, Mukesh sir, Abhishek sir, Shyam sir would be discussing questions from their respective subjects. But before we start, first things first. Number one, we got a lot of demand requests from the students because, as you're aware, Prelims is approaching. And if you're targeting Prelims 2024, you know the significance of CSAT. And I don't have to reiterate the significance of CSAT. Based on your requests, we have come up with another mock test on CSAT. This test shall be conducted on the 12th of June from 2:30 p.m. The link to register for CSAT test, mock test, is in the video description. Please follow that link and give your last mock test on CSAT. That will surely boost your confidence when it comes to the Prelims 2024. But if you're not targeting Prelims 2024, if your target is CSE 2025 or beyond, and if you're looking for guidance, if you're looking for coaching, if you're looking for online live classroom program to prepare for the civil services examination, then we have an important announcement for you. Our batch, a new batch has been launched, and the course fee for that is 29,999. And this is a limited period course fee drop that we are announcing. And after the prelims examination, the course fee will go up. So if you're looking for civil services preparation program for 2025 or beyond, this is the right time to enroll for this program if you're considering Unacademy for your civil services preparation. Let's get started and look at the polity-based questions one by one. First up, consider the following: non-payment of minimum wages to workers, death in police custody, petitions for early hearing of cases pending in high courts, family pension. How many of the above categories of cases can be ordinarily entertained as public interest litigation in India? Public interest litigation, the concept of locus standi does not apply. How can we make justice accessible to weaker sections of the society, marginalized sections of the society? There is this concept called public interest litigation, where any public-spirited individual, on behalf of the weaker sections of the society, when fundamental rights are concerned, can approach the court. And which are these courts? High courts and Supreme Court. You can approach them. Even if you are not an agreed individual, you can approach the court. That's why we say principle of locus standi does not apply. That is the concept behind public interest litigation. But there was also an allegation of misuse, that this public interest litigation has become publicity interest litigation or personal interest litigation. That is why rules were made in the year 1993, then again in the year 2003, to ensure that the important time, precious time of the judiciary is not wasted in hearing these publicity interest litigations or personal interest litigations. That is why rules were made. And according to these rules, which are those areas or elements or issues on the basis of which PIL can be filed? Non-payment of minimum wages to workers, you can approach and file the PIL. If there is a death in the police custody, although please understand one important concept, India has not ratified UN Convention Against Torture. That can be an important statement for your prelims examination. India has not ratified this UN Convention Against Torture, but even if there is a police custody and the allegations are of fake death or the fake encounter, in that case, you can approach the Supreme Court. If there is a case already pending in the High Court, can you file a PIL asking for the early hearing of the case pending in the High Court? No, because according to these rules, this does not fit under public interest litigation. Fourth, family pension. Yes, even if the family pension is denied, you can approach the court by filing a public interest litigation. So C, only 3 is the right answer. Let's look at question number 32 as it appeared in the question paper. Question number 2 for us. Consider the following statements in the context of Panchayati Raj institutions. You would know that when the 73rd Amendment to the Constitution was enacted, previously also multiple attempts were made to give a constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions. This was tried by Shri Rajiv Gandhi when he was the Prime Minister. This was again tried by the next Prime Minister VP Singh as well, Shri VP Singh as well. But then it could not be passed. And when the bill was introduced during the Rajiv Gandhi's time, it was alleged that this is an assault on the federal structure of India. Why? Because local government in the distribution of powers comes under state list. To be more precise, entry 7 of the state list talks about local government. So how can Parliament make a law on state list? That was the allegation. And then as form of a compromise, 73rd Amendment talks about some mandatory provisions, some voluntary provisions. I'm sure you're aware of it, which means Panchayati Raj institutions, listen to me carefully, in all the states are created based on the law passed by the state legislature. So respective state legislatures, when enact laws, and through these laws, Panchayati Raj institutions shall be created in these states. But when the state legislature is making these laws, it has to mandatorily include the provisions, some provisions mentioned in the 73rd Amendment, and if it is optional for them, they can include the voluntary provisions as well, but they don't have to necessarily include these provisions. So mandatory and voluntary provisions. There is a mandatory provision of minimum educational qualification for election to Panchayati Raj institutions in all panchayats in India. No, this is not a mandatory provision. Yes, whoever is eligible to contest legislative assembly election is eligible to contest Panchayati Raj election as well, except the age, because the age to contest Lok Sabha election or legislative assembly election is 25, but the age to contest Panchayati Raj election is 21. Apart from that, the state legislature can provide for other qualifications as well. And these other qualifications can be educational qualifications, but that's a voluntary provision. That is not a mandatory provision. There are some state governments which through their laws they provide for that you have to have a toilet at your home and then you can contest elections. Otherwise, you will be disqualified from contesting elections. So additional qualifications or disqualifications can be prescribed by the state legislature by enacting their laws. So it's not a mandatory provision. Mandatory provision is not less than 1/3 of the seats shall be reserved for women. Mandatory provision is that seats shall be reserved for SCs and STs in proportion to their population. Voluntary provision is to provide for OBC reservation. Clear? A panchayat constituted upon the dissolution of a panchayat before the expiration of its duration shall continue only for the remainder of the period for which the dissolved panchayat would have continued. This statement is correct. B2 only is the right answer. Because what is the term? What is the duration of a panchayat? That is 5 years. But even before 5 years, there can be dissolution. But then by-elections are to be conducted. And the period for which that panchayat will continue will be for the remainder of the term, not for the full term of 5 years. Just like, for example, in Lok Sabha elections. For example, the term of the Lok Sabha MP is 5 years. But what if the MP is disqualified after a year? Or an MP resigns after a year? Or the MP is dead after a year? Then a by-election shall have to be conducted by the Election Commission. And once the new MP is elected, this new MP will not be elected for the entire 5-year term, will be elected for the remainder of the term, which is 4 years. Same way for a Panchayati Raj institutions as well. So B2 only is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following provisions of the Indian Constitution. How many of the above are fundamental duties as prescribed by the Indian Constitution to the citizens? this is a very important topic because some of these fundamental duties, their wording matches some of the DPSPs as well. So you have to be absolutely sure which are these fundamental duties, which are the directive principles. And if you are my student who has attended my classes, I have told you about an acronym that you can follow, which is, I'll mention it in a different pen, color, SSP, ACU, DVD, PR, W. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. These are the 11 fundamental duties under the Constitution. To strive towards excellence in all areas of human endeavor, to safeguard public property and abjure violence, to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, wildlife, to abide by the Constitution, respect its ideals, the national flag and the national anthem, to cherish and follow the rich ideals which shaped our struggle for freedom, to uphold the unity, integrity, sovereignty of India, to develop scientific temper, spirit of humanism, reform, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, right? That is how these fundamental duties you will have to remember. To uphold unity, integrity, sovereignty of India, this is a fundamental duty. To safeguard public property and to abjure violence, this is a fundamental duty. To safeguard forest wildlife of the country, this is basically a directive principle of state policy. What is mentioned in fundamental duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, to protect and improve the natural environment, forests, wildlife. Specifically this term, to safeguard forests and wildlife of the country, this is a directive principle. To promote international peace and security, this is also a directive principle under Article 51 of the Constitution. To renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of the woman, this is a fundamental duty. So B, only 3 is the right answer. Clear? Let's look at another question. Consider the following rights. How many of the above are fundamental rights under the right to equality? This category, right to equality, covers articles 14 to 18. For example, equality before law and equal protection of the laws, Article 14. Article 15, prohibition of discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place and birth. Article 16, which talks about equality of opportunity in public employment. Article 17, which says untouchability is abolished and its practice in all its forms is forbidden. Article 18, which talks about abolition of titles. I'm going very fast because this is a revision. I'm not teaching you something new. Supreme Court in the recent judgment said right against adverse effects of climate change is also a fundamental right under Article 14 as well as 21. So not only under Article 21, under Article 14 as well. Right against untouchability, it comes under Article 17. So it is part of right to equality. Right to internet access. Supreme Court said in one of the cases, Anuradha Basin case, right to access internet is a fundamental right. That comes under Article 19. Right to marry, although the Supreme Court said in the Shafi and Jahan case that it's a fundamental right under Article 21, but then in the Suprio versus Union of India 2024, the Supreme Court said right to marry is not a fundamental right. So the question is not saying how many fundamental rights above are under Article 14 or under right to equality. It's only talking about how many of the above are fundamental rights. Right to marry is not a fundamental right. Right to internet access is a fundamental right, but not under right to equality. It's under right to freedom. So only 2B is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following statements regarding National Register of Citizens and the National Population Register. National Register of Citizens, it contains details of all the citizens of India, which was first updated in 1951. Then in 2017-18 was updated only for Assam on the directions of the Supreme Court because Assam Accord had to be implemented. National Population Register was first updated in 2010. Then it was again updated in 2015. Then it was sought to be updated in 2020 but could not be because of the COVID-19 pandemic. A national population register, it's what? It contains the details of the usual residents of India. And who are the usual residents of India? Those who are in India for the last 6 months and those who want to stay in India for the next 6 months, which means the usual residents can be citizens, usual residents can be aliens as well, foreigners as well. So NPR is a register containing names of all genuine Indian citizens residing in Assam? No, because that is NRC. NRC aims to create a comprehensive database of usual residents. So basically the details have been interchanged. What is NRC is mentioned as NPR. What is NPR is mentioned as NRC. NRC is prepared under the provisions of the Citizenship Act of 1955. That's true in a sense, but whereas NPR is prepared under the provisions of the Citizenship Amendment Act 1985. NPR is prepared under the Citizenship Rules of 2003. So both these statements are incorrect. D is the right answer. Consider the following statements. The Constitution of India gives exclusive power to Lok Sabha in terms of the introduction of a bill for constitutional amendment. This is incorrect, because a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced in either of the two houses, in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. First in Lok Sabha, then in Rajya Sabha, or first in Rajya Sabha, then in Lok Sabha. So it does not give exclusive power to Lok Sabha. Any constitution amendment bill is deemed to be passed if Lok Sabha passes it by 2/3 majority, followed by Rajya Sabha with a simple majority. In both the houses, it requires special majority, which means 2/3 of the members present and voting and majority of the total membership of the House. The 24th Amendment Act 1971 made it mandatory for the President to give assent to a constitutional amendment bill. This is correct. Prior to this amendment in 1971, the President had the option to either withhold her assent or to employ suspensive veto, other powers. But 24th Amendment passed by the Parliament in 1971 made it absolutely mandatory for the President. That's the word. The President shall give assent to a constitutional amendment bill, which means the President has no other option but to give assent, but to sign a constitutional amendment bill. A constitutional amendment bill can be challenged in the Supreme Court only on the grounds of violating the basic structure. A is the right answer. Not only for, yes, if there is a constitutional amendment that has been done, can be challenged in the court on the grounds that it has violated the basic structure. But not only on that ground it can be challenged. It can be challenged on the ground of violation of procedure as well. Sir, what do we mean by violation of procedure? For example, the Parliament is trying to amend some of the federal features of the Constitution. For example, the Parliament is trying to change the manner and method of President's election, which according to Article 368 requires ratification by at least half of the states as well. What if the Parliament is enacting this constitutional amendment, changing the method and manner of President's election without getting this constitutional amendment bill ratified by at least half of the states? That means the Parliament seems to have violated the procedure. On this ground also, it can be challenged in the court. That is why A, only one, is the right answer. Consider the following statements regarding tribunals. The Swaran Singh Committee advocated for the establishment of administrative tribunals. Swaran Singh Committee was set up to recommend a list of fundamental duties that can be incorporated into the Constitution. That is how Article 51 capital A, that is how it got added by a 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, but this committee also advocated for the establishment of administrative tribunals. This is correct. And that is how Article 323 capital A, 323 capital B got added to the Constitution via 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, 1976. Article 323 allows Parliament and state legislatures to establish tribunals for resolving disputes related to taxation, foreign exchange, etc. No. Article 323A and 323B. Article 323A talked about the establishment of administrative tribunals. Article 323 talks about tribunals for other matters such as election disputes, sealing on urban land, taxation, foreign exchange, etc. So it's not Article 323A because A is for administrative tribunals. B is for other tribunals. Any appeal against the decision of the administrative tribunals can be made in the Supreme Court only. No, because there are decisions of the tribunals which can be challenged in the High Court as well. And that is why please revise the Tribunals Reform Act. The question is asking, which of the above statements are not correct? B, two only. These are the incorrect statements. Clear? Let's look at another question. With reference to the power of Council of Ministers in India, consider the following statements. The President acts on the advice of the Council of Ministers and their advice is binding in nature. That's what Article 74 talks about. There shall be Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall act on that advice, provided the President may ask for reconsideration of that advice. But if the same advice is given again, the President is bound by that advice. So this statement is correct. The nature of advice tendered by Council of Ministers to President can be inquired by the Supreme Court only. A, one only is the right answer because Article 74 Clause 2 says the advice tendered by Council of Ministers to the President shall not be inquired into any court of law. That means no court in this country, let alone Supreme Court, can inquire into that advice tendered by Council of Ministers to the President. Let's look at another question. When the Lok Sabha passes a no confidence motion against the Council of Ministers, all ministers have to resign except those who are from the Rajya Sabha. There is something called collective responsibility, which means the Council of Ministers swim and sink together. If the no confidence motion is passed, the Prime Minister, the Council of Ministers have to resign. It does not mean that the ministers from Rajya Sabha will not have to resign. They will have to resign. For example, recently Mr. Modi submitted his resignation to the President. Individual resignation of the Prime Minister means resignation of the entire Council of Ministers. So other Council of Ministers do not have to individually submit their resignation because Prime Minister's resignation means resignation of the entire Council of Ministers. Then once Mr. Modi resigns, the President asked him to continue. He continued, and then since he won the election, the NDA got the majority, he was sworn in again as the Prime Minister. The fundamental principle underlying the working of a parliamentary system of government is the principle of collective responsibility. And that's what I said. Council of Ministers swim and sink together. So statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 2 is correct. D is the right answer. Let's look at another question. Consider the following. Impartial justice, absence of arbitrary power, equality before law. How many of the above are regarded as the main features of the rule of law? See, all the three. Rule of law, we say, which was given by the British constitutional expert A.V. Dicey, wherein he said anybody can sue or be sued, wherein he said nobody shall be deprived of his property or his life except for a breach of law, wherein he said constitution is the result of the ordinary law of land. We say equality before law is the second corollary of the rule of law. corollary means by looking at rule of law, what can you deduce? What is the inference that you can draw? That's something that we have discussed. So here, impartial justice would mean anybody can sue or be sued. Absence of arbitrary power, which means right against arbitrariness, is a fundamental right against under Article 14 of the Constitution, which is part of equality before law, which is considered to be the second corollary of rule of law. So all these are considered to be part of rule of law. 3C, all three is the right answer. Both money bill and financial bill 1 cannot be introduced in Rajya Sabha. This is correct, because a money bill under Article 110, a financial bill type 1 under Article 117 clause 1, these can be introduced only in Lok Sabha, not in Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha does not have the power to amend or reject a money bill and financial bill. This is incorrect, because Rajya Sabha does not have the power to reject or amend a money bill, but Rajya Sabha has the power to reject or amend a financial bill type 1. Which of these statements are correct? Statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect, so C is the right answer. Question 92, consider the following. In how many of the above are the voting rights available to the nominated members of the Parliament? The impeachment process of the President of India, yes, because nominated members are not part of the electoral college to elect the President, but they are they have to vote, they do vote, they have the right to vote when it comes to the impeachment of the President. Removal of the Vice President of India, the nominated members of the Rajya Sabha, they are part of it. Election to the Vice President, because the electoral college to elect the Vice President consists of members of both houses of the Parliament, which means elected as well as nominated. So C, all three is the right answer. Another question. Consider the following statements about the result of the dissolution of the Lok Sabha in India. A bill pending in Lok Sabha, this is where I'll give you some information. With the dissolution of Lok Sabha, there are 3 types of bills which do not lapse. Which are these 3 types of bills? Bills originating in Rajya Sabha pending in Rajya Sabha. These bills do not lapse. Second is bills for which joint sitting was notified by the President. Third, bills awaiting President's assent. Such bills also do not lapse. Plus, motion seeking removal of a High Court or a Supreme Court judge. Such bills and this motion do not lapse upon the dissolution of Lok Sabha. So, a bill pending in Lok Sabha does not lapse whether originating in Lok Sabha or transmitted to it by the Rajya Sabha, it lapses, because any bill which is pending in Lok Sabha lapses. A bill passed by Lok Sabha but pending in Rajya Sabha lapses. It does. Because what is the origin of this bill? Lok Sabha, because it has been passed by Lok Sabha. Now it is pending in Rajya Sabha, it lapses. The only type of bill which does not lapse in this case is a bill which has originated in Rajya Sabha and is pending in Rajya Sabha. A bill pending in Rajya Sabha but not passed by Lok Sabha does not lapse. Why? Because the origin is Rajya Sabha. It is pending in Rajya Sabha, which means a bill pending in Rajya Sabha but not passed by Lok Sabha, which means the bill did not reach Lok Sabha. So, the origin is Rajya Sabha, it is pending in Rajya Sabha, it does not lapse. A bill passed by Lok Sabha but pending in Rajya Sabha lapses, correct. A bill pending in Lok Sabha does not lapse whether originating. So the first is incorrect. How many statements are correct? B, 2 only is the right answer. With reference to Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, Part 4 deals with directive principles of state policy. It seeks to establish political, economic and social democracy in the country. Incorrect. Why? Because for political democracy, we have fundamental rights. For economic and social democracy, we have directive principles of state policy. Unlike Part 3 of the Constitution, provisions of Part 4 are non-justiciable in character. In nature, yes, because these are not enforceable in a court of law. The Constitution of India classifies provisions of Part 4 into socialistic, Gandhian and liberal intellectual categories. No. A, only one is the right answer. Yes, there are some directive principles which we can classify, or there is a list of directive principles from Article 38 to 51, which we can categorize into socialistic, liberal intellectual and Gandhian principles, but that's not the segregation or categorization done by the Constitution. That's done by the constitutional experts, right? So Constitution does not classify into socialistic, Gandhian or liberal intellectual principles. These were the set of questions asked from Indian Polity in All India Prelims mock test, which was conducted yesterday. The link is in the video description. If you haven't attempted this test, you can still attempt it now. And specifically for CSAT, another test, another mock test is scheduled just before your prelims on the 12th of June at 2:30 p.m. The link to register for that CSAT test again is in the video description. Please attempt. And now I would request Chethan sir to come. He's waiting outside. I request him to come and discuss the questions that were asked in this mock test from international relations. But before he comes, I would urge you to also like this video if you have understood the topics that we discussed. Thank you so much. Over to Chethan sir.
Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the paper discussion and analysis of Unacademy All India Prelims mock test number 4. So now we are going to discuss the questions from international relations. Let's look at the first question, which is question number 89 in your mock test paper. Consider the following statements about thermobaric bombs. Thermobaric bombs were in the news because of the ongoing conflicts. Russia was accused of using thermobaric bombs in Ukraine. Israel has been accused of using these thermobaric bombs, which are very controversial, in Gaza against Palestinians. Several other countries as well have been alleged to have used thermobaric bombs, which attract a lot of controversy and criticism. So since the topic has been in current affairs, we have provided this question. So let's look at the first statement. Thermobaric bombs create a high temperature explosion by absorbing oxygen from the surrounding air. See, thermobaric bombs are also called vacuum bombs. They are also known as aerosol bombs, or they are also called fuel air explosive, because they are designed to detonate in a very different manner compared to your conventional bombs. A thermobaric bomb contains two separate explosive charges. It can be delivered either through an aircraft or even through rockets. Usually these bombs are used to target urban areas or densely populated areas where you have a lot of structures and buildings. If your targets are hiding in those buildings, generally countries which have these vacuum bombs or thermobaric bombs, they use them to target such buildings. So there are two separate explosive charges. The initial charge which explodes, it releases an explosive aerosol into the air. It's essentially a fuel, an explosive fuel which is spread as an aerosol, and this cloud of air, this cloud of combustible gas, it will spread throughout the building. It could be a hospital, it could be residential complexes, or a building where terrorists or enemies are hiding. So this aerosol cloud will spread around the region, and then the second explosive charge will detonate. This triggers a massive fireball which will consume that entire region. It will set that entire explosive cloud on fire, and this high temperature fireball will suck out the oxygen present around that area, creating a vacuum. This can decimate buildings, flatten buildings, and it can bring a very painful death to all the people present in that area, especially in those buildings. Now this is where the bomb becomes very controversial. First of all, it leads to disproportionate force being used. Second, it is indiscriminate. It won't distinguish between combatants and civilians. So it will kill indiscriminately, and it brings about a very brutal, painful death. That is the reason why there is a lot of controversy regarding the usage of thermobaric bombs. So statement 1 is definitely correct. It does create a high temperature explosion, the massive fireball, when the second charge explodes, which will set the aerosol cloud on fire. And it absorbs the oxygen from the surrounding air, creating a vacuum which is going to flatten the buildings. Second statement says their usage is banned under the Hague Convention. This statement is wrong, it's incorrect. As of now, there is no international convention that prohibits or bans the usage of thermobaric bombs. Is that clear? But however, if it is established that using thermobaric bombs, civilians have been deliberately targeted, then this could account for war crimes which can be tried under the provisions of the Hague Convention under the International Criminal Court. So only when it is used to target civilians, and if the allegations are established, it can be considered as a war crime. But otherwise it is not banned by any convention. So statement 2 is incorrect. So how many of the above given statements is or are correct? Only one. One only. So option A becomes the correct answer. Now let's look at question number 91. This is related to another type of weapon which has been in the news, the ASAT weapons or anti-satellite weapons. Consider the following with reference to ASAT weapons. They can work without physically destroying the satellites. This statement is absolutely correct. See, ASAT weapons have been in the news because a new space race, arms race has begun as far as militarization of outer space is concerned. The United States, Russia, India and China, these four countries, they possess ASAT capabilities and they have tested their ASAT weapons as well. Now when we talk of anti-satellite weapons, there are many different types of weapons available. A few ASAT weapons uses the kinetic kill option. For example, if you read about India's ASAT weapon test which was conducted in 2019 called Mission Shakti, India used a modified ballistic missile and we used this to take out an old defunct satellite in orbit. This was a physical kill where the ballistic missile made a close approach towards the target satellite and detonated its explosive charge, thereby physically destroying the satellite. But other than physical destruction of a satellite through such missiles, there are other methods available. For example, through electromagnetic interference, you can disrupt its communication. Through a cyber attack, you can take over a satellite and thus ensure that the enemy can no longer access the satellite. Because today, as you know, satellites play a critical role, not just with regard to the civilian applications, but with the military application as well. So there are many non-kinetic ways of taking out an enemy satellite, from cyber attacks to electromagnetic interference. So statement 1 is definitely correct. They can work without physically destroying the satellite as well, because there are few non-kinetic options. But in the case of India, if you look at our anti-satellite weapon test, that is Mission Shakti, it was a kinetic kill where the satellite was physically destroyed, that generated a lot of space debris. Second statement says there are particularly known for leaving zero space debris. This statement is wrong, because non-kinetic kill will not generate space debris, but a kinetic kill of a satellite where the satellite is physically destroyed by a ballistic missile, it will leave behind space debris. India was criticized by many countries for conducting this space weapon test. So second statement is wrong. India and China are the only countries who have successfully tested the ASAT weapons. Again, incorrect. Not just India, China, even before India, China, US and Russia, they had already tested their ASAT weapons. So what's the right answer? How many of the given statements are correct? Only one given statement is correct. Option A is your right answer. Next, question number 97. Consider the following countries. 5 countries are mentioned. How many of the above mentioned countries are the members of the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association? India, Australia, France, Iran, Madagascar. What is IORA? IORA is a very important regional grouping focused on the Indian Ocean. In the 1990s, in 1995, the then South African leader Nelson Mandela paid a historic visit to India. During this visit, Nelson Mandela came up with the idea of bringing the Indian Ocean countries together. He proposed an idea that the littorals, the rim states of the Indian Ocean, their history, their culture, their geography is bound together by the Indian Ocean. So he came up with this concept of bringing the Indian Ocean littorals together when he was visiting India. Following this, in 1997, India, South Africa and even Mauritius, they established this organization which previously was known as IORARC. It was known by a different name initially. It was called Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation, because it was bringing the rim countries together, the littorals of the Indian Ocean together. So over the years, the IORA's membership has expanded. Today there are 23 member states. Almost all the Indian Ocean littorals are part of this important organization. From Iran in the Persian Gulf to UAE and Oman and Yemen towards the Arabian Sea, and of course India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka from South Asia, and even East African countries like Kenya, Mozambique, Tanzania, etc. And Indian Ocean island nations like Maldives, Mauritius, Madagascar, Seychelles, and even Southeast Asian countries which are littorals of Indian Ocean like Singapore and Indonesia, and as well as Australia. They're all members of this important grouping. Even France is a member, because France has an overseas territory in the Indian Ocean called the French Reunion or the La Reunion. So as a result, India, Australia, France, Iran, Madagascar, all the 5 countries are members of IORA. Option D is your correct answer. This group focuses on some important areas of cooperation, from maritime security to economic relations, cultural relations, the blue economy model. It also focuses on marine environment conservation, climate change, and disaster management assistance. So these are some priority areas of IORA grouping. Next, question number 98. Consider the following statements regarding Group of Friends initiative to promote accountability for crimes against UN peacekeepers. Statement 1 says the initiative was launched by India during its presidency of UN Security Council. This statement is absolutely correct. India held the non-permanent seat at UN Security Council. We held a non-permanent seat from 2021 to 2022. So during this 2-year term, India held the presidency of UNSC for 2 months. So in December 2022, when India's term was about to expire, India proposed some very important initiatives through the UNSC, and one of them was GOF, Group of Friends Initiative. The purpose of the initiative was to ensure that those who commit crimes against UN peacekeepers are held accountable for their crimes. Because India is one of the largest troop contributing countries to UN peacekeeping forces. Till date, cumulatively, we have contributed more than 2 lakh personnel from our armed forces, paramilitary forces and police forces who have been deployed in various conflict zones as part of UN peacekeeping missions. India has suffered the biggest loss as well. More than 170 to 180 Indian military personnel have sacrificed their lives during their line of duty. In many cases, UN peacekeepers are targeted, sometimes by the armed groups which are operating in a conflict zone, the rebel organizations, or sometimes the state actors. So this poses a significant threat for the safety and well-being of UN peacekeepers. So India has been pushing for holding these criminals accountable for any killing of UN peacekeepers or any crimes committed against UN peacekeepers. So that was the primary purpose behind this initiative. It urges member states to investigate, arrest and prosecute those who commit crimes against peacekeepers. This statement is definitely correct. India is the world's largest cumulative contributor of peacekeepers. Again, the statement is correct. So the right answer would be option C. All 3 statements are correct. Now coming to the last IR question, question number 100. Trends in World Military Expenditure 2023 report recently in the news is released by which institution? See, this is one of the most important reports with regard to military expenditure. It is brought out by the SIPRI, Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Option A is your right answer. SIPRI is a think tank based out of Stockholm, and it closely tracks military expenditure, the militarization which is going on around the world, and as well as the accumulation of nuclear arsenal by the nuclear powers and the nuclear weapon states. So SIPRI reports are very important to track the militarization and the arms race which is taking place around the world, and this is one of the most important reports. Trends in World Military Expenditure report. According to the last year's report, India has been ranked as the 4th largest country in terms of military expenditure. India saw a significant jump in its military expenditure to around 83 to 84 billion dollars, which places India at the 4th position as far as military expenses are concerned. And before India, it would be US, China and Russia. Only these 3 countries are ahead of India in terms of their military expenditure, and also it will help you understand some important trends and why countries are increasing their military expenditure. For example, Russia's military expenses have gone up significantly, driven directly by the Ukraine conflict. The Cold War rivalry between US-China has led to modernization of their military forces, and their expenditure has shot up quite significantly. Same with India. We have been facing consistent challenges with China and Pakistan. The standing border dispute, especially following the Ladakh clashes of 2020, and the threat of cross-border terrorism from Pakistan. So this has pushed India to modernize its armed forces, and we have seen a significant jump in our military expenditure, which places India at the 4th position. SIPRI also brings out a separate report tracking the nuclear arsenal possessed by the important nuclear power states. So SIPRI reports can be very important for the exam. Just the basic details, the trends are very relevant. So option A would be the correct answer. So on this note, I bring my brief discussion to an end. Now Abhishek Mishra sir will be taking over. Please don't go anywhere. And Abhishek sir will be discussing all the history questions that had appeared in mock test number 4. So that is it from my side. Please stay tuned. Just give us a few seconds and we will restart the session very soon. Thank you, and let's begin the next part of the discussion.
Welcome back everybody. We'll be now discussing the history questions, and when you look at the questions itself, you have a good mix of factual plus conceptual questions for this test. So without any further ado, let's start our discussion. First question is related to an act which was there in the news. Consider the following statements with reference to the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958. This has been in the news quite a lot. It has been misused also in multiple contexts. So this question is quite representative of an act related to culture which was in the news. The act is not applicable to privately owned historical monuments. It protects monuments and sites that are more than 100 years old, including stepwells and coast minars. State governments have the power to delist the historical monuments under this provision. So which is correct. Now if you have any idea about this act a little bit also, you would know that the second statement is totally correct. The act was created basically to protect any site or monument which is declared by the government, specifically the central government, which has the power to add and delist from this act itself any site which is more than 100 years old and should be protected. Stepwells, Baulis and coast minars which were created during the early Sarmad period are with specific reference given there. So this is correct. The center would obviously have much more power with regards to delisting when it's a central act itself, though states have an idea or have the right to propose certain sites to the center. The first is also incorrect, wherein under this act there is no distinction between public and private. If it's a privately owned haveli and needs to be protected, and it is quite important, does not matter if it is private or public, it will go under the act if the center is listing it under this act or delisting it. That therein lies the idea of misuse, because the center and central government can list and delist even private property under this act. So only one statement is correct, which is first and second are first and third are incorrect, second is totally correct. Okay, this we've discussed previously also. Interesting and important geo heritage tag itself. Consider the following statement in context of Pandavula Gutta. If you've done the UCAN session, we have discussed it in a lot of what we call as detail, which is Unacademy Current Affairs Navigator, in which we basically cover all current affairs related to each and every subject in the whole month. We've discussed this there also. It is an ancient hill range of the Deccan Plateau, older than the Himalayas. It is the only geoheritage site situated in Telangana, and Pandavula Gutta rock paintings depict wildlife and geometrical designs, which are correct. Here all three statements are correct. Yes, it is one of the older what we call part of the Indian plate itself. So therefore it is older than the Himalayas itself, and therefore it is an ancient hill range older than the Himalayas. Because it's part of the Deccan Plateau itself, it automatically is much older than the Himalayas. The Himalayas being basically when the Indian plate is going to go into the Eurasian plate itself, and therefore the fold mountains. Now is it only from Telangana? Yes, the only site from Telangana itself, and thereafter there are petroglyphs here which basically have depiction of wildlife and geometrical designs. So here all three correct. With this, let's move to question number 44, a factual one but an important one. Sites are coming in the paper. In 2023 we saw it, in 2022 we saw it. You have Morodharo, then you have Shahbazgadi, Sanati and the Bhatagarv or Bhatgarv. Which of them are Harappan sites, and that too well known? Though the sites which are quoted in this are not well known ones, but the question is, out of these four, which one are IVC sites? Now if you have any idea about Mauryan period or Mauryan Empire and Dhamma, and specifically Ashokan edicts, you would basically know that Shahbazgadi is a very important Ashokan major rock edict, and again you would know that Sanati is a minor rock edict. Shahbazgadi is quite known. Sanati is the one which has previously been in the news also, has been asked by UPSC also quite late. But the fact is these two are Mauryan sites, so they are not Harappan sites, and Morodharo and Bhatagarv are, so only two of them are Harappan sites. Here Shahbazgadi is the giveaway. Shahbazgadi and Sanati are Mauryan Empire sites, or Mauryan sites, specifically rock edict sites. This is a major rock edict, this is a minor rock edict. You should know the basic location of at least major rock edicts in the larger context of your preparation. With this, let's talk about question number 45. Again, art and culture, important related to a Shilpkari. You should know the basic geography, where they are, the state and the unique characteristic about it. This is very, very important in that sense. With reference to the Dokra Shilpkari, consider the following statements. It is one of the oldest known methods of metal casting by using lost wax technique itself. It is widely popular amongst the tribes of Western India. Thereafter, it is recognized as one of the intangible heritages under the cultural heritage tag of UNESCO. So, is it an intangible heritage under UNESCO or not? Now, is Dokra Shilpkari based on lost wax technique? Yes, lost wax technique we saw for the first time properly in the Harappan civilization, where you create a wax sculpture, cast it, then heat it, then wax is removed and then you put in the metal itself. Used for the first time in IVC, used as late as the Chola period, and till today lost wax technique is used. Is it widely popular amongst the tribe of Western India? No, it is Eastern India. We find it more in Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, Orissa, Bihar sector rather than the what we call as Western sector. Last but not the least, this is also incorrect because in the list of intangible heritages, there is no Dokra Shilpkari, rather we have the Thateras of Jandalaguru, who are the only skill based UNESCO intangible which has been actually recognized. So, you have the copper objects, the Thateras of Jandalaguru in Punjab, who have been recognized for their skill. There is no Shilpkari or casting which has been recognized under UNESCO intangible heritage tag. So, this is incorrect. So, there is only one statement which is correct, which is the first one. Question number 46. This is an interesting one because it is asking you battles plus rulers plus foreign travelers. So, it can be a medieval question also, it can be an art and culture question also. With reference to post-Gupta period of Indian history, consider the following statements. Dhruvasena too was the contemporary of Harshvardhan and the most important rulers of the Maukharis. Harshvardhan defeated Chalukyan king Pulkesin II on the banks of river Narmada. Hyun Sang visited India during the period of Harshvardhan. Which of them are correct? Now, here again this is a very well known fact. Hyun Sang came during Harshvardhan's period, then got robbed, and then there was capital punishment to the person who robbed Hyun Sang. So, this is correct. This one is reversed. It was Pulkesin II who defeated Harshvardhan in the Battle of Narmada. The Battle of Narmada, which is on the river's bank of Narmada itself. In the Battle of Narmada, Pulkesin II, a Chalukyan ruler, defeated Harshvardhan, therefore stopping the southward movement of Harshvardhan. So, this is incorrect. And the first one is also incorrect because the Maukharis were not that important in the larger story of post-Gupta. He is a Maitraka ruler. Maitrakas ruling from the Gujarat sector are very, very important for this area. So, this is Dhruvasena II is not a Maukhari ruler but a Maitraka ruler. If you have seen the video with regards to through timelines, I have revised the ancient and medieval part. You would see I have the Maukharis, Maitrakas in the list also, and I have shown the location of them also. So, you should go through that video once if you are revising for 2024, and if not generally, so that you have a basic understanding of the geographical changes, because through maps I have discussed how post-Gupta and early medieval is changing, because that area there is a lot of flux in that sense. So, these two are again incorrect, only one statement is correct, which is the third one. With this, let us move to question number 48, technical but interesting, which is Tantric Buddhism. Which of the following statements are correct? It incorporates Mahayanic Buddhist aspects and introduces secretive ceremonies. The tradition is renowned for its colorful and intricate mandalas. Tantric Buddhism has three main schools, Gulag being the oldest. Now, yes, Tantricism, Vajrayanic Buddhism basically is an offshoot of Mahayanic Buddhism itself. So, there is a transitionary period from what we call as Mahayanic to Tantric Buddhism to Vajrayanic. So, this is correct. Does it have a lot of colorful representation of Buddha and a lot of different mantras? Yes, but this is incorrect. There are not three schools but four schools. You do not have to know the names, but there are four schools of Tantric Buddhism, out of which basically the Vajrayanic Buddhists incorporated or even inherited these four schools in that regard. So, in this, two statements are correct, the first and the second. Third is incorrect based on a specific technicality. So, I hope that you are going to note this, that there are four schools of Tantric Buddhism. Question number 49, with regards to post-Mauryan art. The Gandhara school of art was significantly influenced by Greco-Roman pantheon. The Mathura school is characterized by its religious influences rooted in Buddhism. The Amravati school was influenced by all three major religions of the time. Now again, this is a very standard schools of art question. This you should have got correct totally. Gandhara school, yes, influenced by Greco-Roman art, Indo-Greeks and Kanishka influence, so Gandhara correct. Mathura school is characterized by rooted in Buddhism, no. Mathura is the one which has the influence of all, Buddhist, Jain, Hinduistic, secular, all are found. This is incorrect. Amravati school of art is influenced by all three major religions, no, this is again incorrect. This one is going to be true for, this is basically reversed in that sense. Amravati school is basically mostly Hinayanic Buddhism, that is why images of Buddha are not there, that the symbols of Buddha are there. So these two are incorrect, only one is correct, but remember these two are reversed. All three major religions impact Mathura school. Amravati school and Gandhara have a very strong Buddhist presence and influence in that regard. Question number 50. Schools of philosophy, an important portion of art and culture. You have to do this, and these are very realistic type of questions out of this area. Sankhya school, everything comes under Purusha and Prakriti. Nyaya, it is believed that only knowledge can lead to salvation. Using knowledge you can basically get salvation. Vedanta, Brahma or Brahman is a true reality, everything else is unreal. Mimamsa, it involves analyzing, interpreting, applying Samhita and Brahmana parts of the Vedas. Now first things first, let's logically go through all of them. Is Vedanta school about the concept of, you have to see which is correctly matched. Vedanta school about true reality and everything else unreal? Yes. The Prakriti, this is the only school which is out of this, a dualistic school, a Dvaita school, and under this Dvaita school, it very simply says that everything is Maya Moksha, only Brahma the creator is the true reality. There is only one reality, whatever you see around you is Maya and an illusion. So this is correct. Then you have Sankhya. Sankhya is, yes, Advaita school. You have, this is the only, one second, this is the only this is the only Advaita school, sorry. This is the only Advaita school, monoism, which is there is one God. All others are dualistic, which is Dvaita. Dvaita, under this Prakriti Purusha. Purusha is the physical and this is the metaphysical or the spiritual. So Sankhya, Mimamsa, Nyaya, Vaisheshika and Yoga are Dvaita, and Vedanta and Mimamsa, these two together Advaita. Advaita means monoism, these two means dualism. Dualism means Prakriti Purusha, and this means only one, which is Brahma is the creator, he is the real thing in the world itself, everything else is unreal. So these two Dvaita, these two Advaita, just to clarify, because I was saying Advaita, writing Dvaita. Okay, so we have Sankhya, everything is under Prakriti Purusha, yes. This division is there, which is that you have the spiritual world, you have this world itself, and when they interact, you get Jiva itself. This is correct. Vedanta also correct. So 1 and 3 correct. Then Mimamsa school, analyzing, interpreting, applying Samhita and Brahmana. See, Mimamsa is nothing but repackaged Brahmanism or Vedic Brahmanism, and this is also correct. Both of these are, the Vedanta school is an offshoot of Mimamsa because they got frustrated by ritualisms and the justifications given by the Mimamsa school. So these two are correct. Nyaya believes that using knowledge can lead to salvation. This is incorrect. You need logical knowledge or the concept of right knowledge. Because the word right knowledge has not been used, this is a vague statement. So only 2 is incorrectly matched, 3 here are correctly matched. Nyaya, remember, says there is right knowledge, wrong knowledge. It is only when we get right knowledge, in turn leads to the concept of the salvation. Please remember this. This is where Sankhya and Nyaya are also different. Sankhya says you need sensory knowledge, every knowledge is important, all knowledge will lead to salvation. Nyaya says no, not all knowledge is important, only the right knowledge is important. So we have only 3. Question number 81, revolutionaries and associated personalities. We have the Murarikpur or Murarikpukur conspiracy, also basically called Alipur conspiracy case or the Maniktola conspiracy case. Jatindranath Mukherjee, Delhi Lahore conspiracy, Damodar Balkrishna, Havda gang conspiracy, Prafulla Chakki, which are correctly matched. Now again, you know this is if you know the name of Alipur conspiracy case being Manik Tola or the Morakpur conspiracy, you would know this is incorrect. It is Prafulla Chakki and Khudiram Bose who are related to it. Kingsford assassination, this is incorrect. Delhi Lahore conspiracy, which is Damodar Balkrishna, this is again incorrect because this is referring to Harding bombing 1912, which is basically Raj Bihari Bose or Sachin Sanyal would have been the right answer. Then you have Havda gang conspiracy. Here it is Jachindranath Mukherjee. These two are basically reversed. This should have been Raj Bihari Bose or Sachin Sanyal. These two have been reversed. Here none of them are correctly matched. All are incorrectly matched in the larger context. Okay. 82. Consider the following pairs of foreign travelers and kings. Fahyan Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, Ibn Battuta Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Megasthenes Harshvardhan, and thereafter Abdul Razak Dev Raya II. Now very simply Fahyan is Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, totally correct. Ibn Battuta is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, again totally correct, and Abdul Razak is Dev Raya II, totally correct. Megasthenes has nothing to do with Harshvardhan. Megasthenes came under Ashoka, or rather not even Ashoka, he is associated with his father. So, he is known to have come during Chandragupta Maurya and some period of Bindusara, but Ashoka refers to him quite a lot, and Ashokan sources which are written in Greek refer to him quite a lot. This is incorrect, so only 3 are correctly matched. Question number 82. Now, consider the following statements regarding the Government of India Act 1919. The central legislative councils were enlarged and majority of their members were to be elected. The provincial subjects were divided into reserved and transfer subjects. Provincial legislative councils were made bicameral under this act. Congress had a special session in Madras in 1918 following the declaration of the act itself. Simon Commission was appointed under review to basically submit this report. So, you have to know the Simon Commission was appointed to review the working of this act, which submitted its report in 1924. So, which is not correct, So, was the Central Legislative Council enlarged and majority were elected? This is correct. Provincial subjects were divided into reserved and transferred. Yes, hierarchy introduced through this act itself. This is also correct. The PLCs were made bicameral under this act. This is incorrect. Why? Because bicameralism at the provincial level comes through the 1935 Government of India Act, not the 1919. Rather, bicameral center is there through it. Congress had a special session in 1918 following the declaration of this act. See, very simply, there is a very big catch in this question. It says August 1918. Congress had a special session in Madras in August 1918 following the declaration of this act. Now, there can be two ways of looking at this question. The Montague Declaration, through which the Montague-Chelmsford reforms come in 1919, came in 1917. And at the same point of time, you have the act only coming after Jallianwala Bagh as a way of carrot stick policy. So, the carrot was Montague Declaration, and thereafter you have the Rowlatt Satyagraha, Rowlatt Act, and then comes this is the carrot stick, and then comes the carrot, which is this act itself. Now, this is where you have to look at this question from two perspectives. Congress held a special session following the declaration of this act. The declaration that there will be act came in August of 1917. So, therefore, this statement becomes correct. However, if it would saying that after the enactment of this act, then the statement would become incorrect because it would be after it. Simon Commission was appointed to review the working of the act, which submitted the date is incorrect. Not 1924. So, the report of the Simon Commission was given in 1930. 1927 is when Simon Commission came, and 1930 is when it submitted reports, which was the context in which the roundtable conferences also happened. So, we have 5 incorrect and 3 incorrect. So, therefore, there are only 2 statements which are not correct. Not correct, this is correct, and this is contextually correct because it is referring to the Montague Declaration in that regard. So, this one the statement number 4 is the one which basically makes you think, and if it will make you think, that is more important. It is where you have to pay a lot of attention and read closely in the larger context of your preparation. Consider the following statements with reference to Lokmanya Tilak's Home Rule movement. One of its aim was formation of linguistic states. He opened cooperative stores during the Home Rule movement. He founded the first Home Rule League in Bombay. C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer and George Arundale worked with Tilak's Home Rule League, which is correct. Now you see, one of its aims was formation of linguistic states, correct. He opened cooperative stores. There was no concept of cooperatives as of right now within Tilak's Home Rule League movement. He founded the first Home Rule League movement in Bombay. No, it is Belgaum or Belgaum, whatever you want to call it, and his headquarters was at Pune. So this is also incorrect. And C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer and George Arundale are related to the Home Rule movement, but not Tilak. It is Annie Besant. It is Annie Besant's league they are associated with. This is also incorrect. So there is only one statement which is correct, which is the first one. All others are incorrect. Okay. With this, a statement based question, statement 1, statement 2 and the concept of correctly matched, and is it actually explaining or not. Statement 1, the Khilafat movement brought the urban Muslims into the fold of the national movement. There was a predominant element of anti-imperialism in the ongoing national movement as well as the Khilafat movement itself. So it is asking you, are these two correct first, and is it explaining? There was a predominant element of anti-imperialism in the ongoing national movement and Khilafat, yes, because the new form of revolutionary emerged within the Muslims itself during the Khilafat. And the Khilafat movement brought urban Muslims into the fold of national movement, yes. So basically the answer is A, because there was an anti-imperialistic fold in Khilafat itself, a lot of the Muslims who had been kept away from the national movement because of what we today call as the Aligarh movement itself, they will now come in. So the new Muslim nationalist will emerge during the Khilafat, and he will also mobilize other urban Muslims. So with this, we've discussed all the questions of history. Please do note that the questions are quite representative of the pattern when it comes to art and culture. I hope you were able to get the questions correct. Remember, there's another mock test on 12th June at 2:30 p.m. This is a CSAT and mock test itself, very, very important in the larger context of your preparation. Thank you so much. Now I will hand it over to Shyam sir, who will be taking questions from economics and government schemes. Thank you and all the best for the examination. Take care.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the discussion on the questions which have appeared from the subject of economy and government schemes. Let's start. Question number 21. Consider the following statements regarding special drawing rights, STR. You'll have to find out how many of the above statements are correct. By the way, the concept of STR has been there in the discussion in the recent times. As such, it's a concept which is important from the static area. And those who are wondering, sir, STR is associated with what? STR is a reserve asset. I repeat, it is a reserve asset that has been introduced, issued by IMF to its member countries. STR stands for Special Drawing Rights and was introduced back in the year 1969. Currently, there is a basket of currencies which consist of US dollar, the pound, yuan, yen and euro, the 5 currencies which are considered in determining the price or the value of 1 unit of STR. And the reason why it is there in the current affairs very recently is the number of STRs which have been issued. Now, the quantity that has been issued is under review, and that is generally done. Once every 5 years, there is a review regarding the STRs which are issued. The first step of review is done by the directors and then the Board of Governors. I repeat, the Board of Governors, which is the highest decision making authority, that will decide how many STRs will be issued to whom, how much, etc. So, last year the rise in the STR allocation has been approved. This year they would be taking up, the Board of Governors would be taking up the issuance of STRs, additional issuance of STRs in the month of November. Now, based on this, STRs can be exchanged among the member countries through voluntary trading arrangements. Meaning what? Imagine India has certain number of STRs. Can it basically sell these STRs or transfer these STRs to other member country? Statement is true. First statement is right. Countries can use STRs to directly purchase goods and services. Underline the term directly. Underline the term directly. Can you use these STRs to conduct trade with other countries? Statement 2 is wrong. No doubt it is a reserve asset. You can use this asset to convert into other freely convertible international currencies. But are you allowed to use STRs for conducting trade and making a payment for the trade? No. Third one, the International Monetary Fund allocates STRs to member countries in proportion to the gold reserves with the central banks. Statement 3 is also wrong. The allocation of STRs is based on a concept called as quota. Under IMF, you will come across a term called as quota. What is the quota? Quota represents a number which is representing what is the relative position of a country in the global market. I repeat, quota is nothing but a number. It's a building block of IMF. And this quota represents what is the relative position of a country in the global market. That is basically the concept of quota. And to decide the quota, to arrive at a quota, the IMF uses 4 factors such as GDP, variability, openness, reserves. Based on these 4 parameters, the quota for every member country is decided. And the quota will determine what will be the voting right of a member country. It determines how much STRs would be allocated, and more importantly, it will also be used to provide loans to the member countries. That is, the member countries are allowed to take loans from IMF based on what? Based on the quotas itself. So, third statement wrong. Fourth one, the allocation of STRs increases the overall reserves of global economy. Yes, if STRs allocated to India will increase, allocated to USA will increase, to China, to Japan will increase, the reserves which are held in the global market automatically will start increasing. So, first is correct, fourth is correct. Right option for question number 21 will be option B. Let me go to the next question, question number 22. Consider the following statements. How many of the above statements is or are correct? Credit ratings are only applicable to companies listed on the stock exchanges. Statement 1 is wrong. And before I go to the second statement, what do you understand by the term credit rating? What do you understand by the concept of a credit rating? Please understand. Credit rating is generally used to represent what is the capacity of a borrower to repay the loan, to basically honor the debt obligations. That is represented either in the form of an alphabet or the combination of alphabet and number. That is the concept of a credit rating. For example, you must have heard of credit rating agencies such as S&P, Standard and Poor, such as Fitch, such as Moody's. These are the three very important global credit rating agencies. And these credit rating agencies will provide credit rating not only for the companies but also for the government. That is the instruments which are used by the government to borrow from the market. For example, the government of USA uses treasury instruments, treasury bills to borrow from the market. Government of India uses the treasury bills as well as the dated securities to borrow from the market. So the credit rating agencies will provide a rating in the form of an alphabet such as AAA, AA, alphabet C, alphabet D, etc. Or else they will also use a combination of both of them, that is alphabets and numbers, such as BA2, BA3, etc. So that is basically the idea of a credit rating. And some of you will be thinking, sir, agreed, this is for companies, this is for the government. What about me and you? What about my friend? What about my relative? Can they also get a credit rating done? For individual borrowers such as you and me, it is not called as a credit rating, it is called as a CIBIL score or credit score. Done? Now let's look at the statements. Ratings are only applicable to the companies listed on the stock exchanges. No. What about the instruments which are issued by the companies which are not listed to borrow? What about the government, etc.? So first statement is wrong. Second statement, a higher credit rating by an agency signifies lower risk. This statement is absolutely correct. This is absolutely correct. Why so? Whenever you look at the table of credit rating agencies, the ratings are divided into two groups. The group which is generally represented in the first part of the table, that group of ratings is called as an investment grade. And the best example of an investment grade rating is AAA. If any instrument issued has a AAA, compare this instrument with, let's say, another instrument which has a rating of, let's say, alphabet C or alphabet D. What does it actually indicate? In the first group where the ratings are AAA, AA, BBB, etc., the ratings represent lower risk. And when you move to the second part of the table, they will generally refer to this group as a speculative grade or a junk grade. And if one instrument has a speculative grade or a junk grade such as C or D, in such case the risk is very high, returns will also be very high. So second statement is correct. Third one, the Basel III regulations eliminated the use of credit ratings for determining the capital requirements of the banks. Absolutely no. The Basel III guidelines are associated with the banking sector. Slightly technical statement. No doubt it is associated with the banking sector. Banks use various instruments. For example, additional tier 1 bond. The banks also issue tier 2 bonds. So these kinds of instruments which are issued by the banks to raise capital counted as a part of the Basel guidelines. Is there no requirement of credit rating there? Of course no, it has not withdrawn this requirement. So 22, first is wrong, third one is wrong, right option will be option A, only one is correct. Question number 23, with reference to Monetary Policy Committee, consider the following statements. It is a 5-member committee of the Reserve Bank of India. It's a 5-member committee of RBI. No, this is wrong. Why? The Monetary Policy Committee has 6 members. Its composition is 6 members. And out of these particular 6 members, 3 of them are representatives of RBI. For example, the RBI governor is the chairperson, is also part of the 3 members. And the remaining 3 members are the experts who are appointed by Government of India. Are the experts who are appointed by Government of India. Now, it's a 5-member committee. Wrong. It determines the key policy rates required to achieve the inflation target. Underline the term key policy rate. Absolutely correct. The Monetary Policy Committee is responsible for deciding what will be the repo rate, for deciding what will be the reverse repo rate or standing deposit facility, etc. But here the term is key policy rate. Key policy rate is the repo rate. So, statement 2 is correct. Third one, the meetings of MPC are held at least 6 times in a year. Underline the term at least. Why? If the term at least is not mentioned, currently we are following a policy called as bi-monthly monetary policy. Bi-monthly monetary policy. Bi-monthly essentially means once every 2 months. So, basically if you are following one meeting or having one meeting for every 2 months, in 1 year you will have 6 meetings. But underline the term at least. Does it mean we are supposed to meet at least 6 times in a year? Absolutely no. According to the RBI Act, amended RBI Act now, we are not supposed to meet at least 6 times in a year. We are supposed to meet at least 4 times in a year. So, third statement is wrong. The policy decisions of the MPC are taken by consensus, not necessarily. Understand that statement now. Is it always taken through consensus? Absolutely no. There is no requirement of a consensus. You need a majority. You need, out of 6 members, you need at least 4 members or the 4 votes on one side. And that's the reason multiple times whenever the MPC is over, after a couple of days, you will come across the minutes of the meeting. And in the minutes of the meeting, they will mention which of the member voted in favor of the policy hike or policy repo rate decreasing, etc. and which are the members who opposed it. So, what you require is 4 votes in favor of a decision. So, third is wrong, fourth is wrong, only the second one is right. Question number 23, right option is option A. Question number 24. With reference to financial market, consider the following statements regarding T+0 settlement cycle. You will have to find out how many of the above statements are correct. By the way, please understand, earlier, very recently, until very recently, we followed a T+2 settlement cycle. It was shifted to a T+1 settlement cycle. And as we are in the process of implementing, we have implemented the T+1 very recently. SEBI has also introduced in certain instruments T+0 settlement cycle. And by the way, India is not the first country to introduce the idea of a T+0. And also in the global market, there are multiple countries even today which follow T+2 or T+1 settlement. Now, what do you understand by the term settlement? What is the meaning of the term settlement here? Imagine today, I will purchase a share from you in a particular transaction, let's say in the stock market. We have agreed that you will sell the share to me and I will purchase the share and I will transfer the money to you. Immediately the shares are not transferred and money is not given. I hope you understand. Transaction is done, that is basically we have agreed. We have agreed that you will transfer the share to me and I will transfer the money to you. The transaction is basically agreed upon, but the settlement will take time. And the number of days or number of hours within which you are supposed to complete the settlement from the point of, let's say right now, that is basically called as a settlement cycle. Whenever you come across the term T+1, what does it mean? It basically means from the time 24 hours will be required or within 24 hours it will be done. T+0 means in this particular day itself the settlement is going to happen. It's not equivalent to instant settlement. I hope you understand. It's not even equal to instant settlement. It's not a Maggi that you cut the packet, open it and cook it within 5 minutes or let's say 2 minutes as per the advertisement. No, it is not an instant settlement. It basically means within 24 hours the settlement will be done. So, basically the concept of T+0 has been introduced. India is not the first country. T+0 settlement cycle, the transaction is settled instantly as the trade is executed. Execution means the securities will be transferred and the money will be transferred. The two transaction will happen immediately once we agree to this particular transaction. No. Second one, the T+0 settlement cycle reduces counterparty risk and increases liquidity in the market. Of course, yes. Counterparty risk basically means there are certain clearing houses or there are certain parties which are involved who are taking a risk when we enter into a transaction because they are guaranteeing the transaction would be completed. That is basically the idea of a counterparty risk. So, in case of T+0 settlement cycle, will this counterparty risk will be reduced? Yes. Will the liquidity in the market increase? Of course, the answer is yes. Lower the number of hours taken for completion of the transaction, settlement of the transaction, more transactions can be conducted. Higher the number of transactions, it will lead to higher liquidity in the market. So, second statement is true. T+0 settlement cycle is currently the standard for all major stock exchanges worldwide? No. India is the first country in the world to launch T+0 settlement cycle. As already mentioned, this is also not true. For example, China, it has already implemented the concept of a T+0. So, India is not the first country in the world. So, question number 24, first is wrong, 3 is wrong and 4 is wrong. Right option will be option A, right, which is only 1 is correct. So, T+0 has been there in the discussion. Please be very careful with this. Basically means on the same day the settlement will happen, okay, compared to earlier situation where T+1, right, after 1 day it will be settled, after 2 days it would be settled, under T+2, etc. On the same day the settlement will happen. So, question number 25, consider the following statements regarding scale based regulation framework for non-banking financial companies in India. How many of the above statements are correct? Please understand, non-banking financial companies, NBFC. The Reserve Bank of India is concerned about the functioning of NBFCs. Reason is simple. NBFCs perform similar function to a bank. These perform functions which are similar to a bank. But there is a huge gap in the regulation regarding the NBFCs as well as the banks. In case of the banking sector, RBI is the regulator, very strict, very stringent measures are taken. Whereas in case of NBFCs, there is a regulatory arbitrage. Basically means there is a gap in the regulation compared to banks. The NBFCs enjoy certain freedoms, or let's say are having more relaxations in terms of application of laws, regulations compared to a bank. But RBI simply says, just like a bank, even the NBFCs are important. If bank fails, it will have an impact on the financial market, financial system. If NBFC also fails, it will also have a huge impact on financial system. So, when we have more regulation for the banking sector, why not have similar regulation on the same level, at the same level or at par, even applicable to NBFCs? And that is a precise reason why Reserve Bank of India announced a policy which is called as a scale based regulatory system. Yes, BR, scale based regulation. Under scale based regulation, the NBFCs would be classified into 4 categories: the bottom layer, middle layer, upper layer and the top layer. And as you keep on moving from the bottom to the top, the regulations which are imposed, the conditions which are imposed would keep on increasing. For example, let me connect this to current affairs. There are many NBFCs which have been classified as upper layer NBFCs, none in case of top layer, upper layer NBFCs. One of the conditions that RBI says will be applicable if you become a upper layer NBFC is once you are classified as upper layer, within 5 years you will have to get listed in the stock market. And very recently many NBFCs which earlier have been classified as a upper layer NBFCs have approached RBI and have requested RBI, please do not impose conditions on us. Don't force us to get listed in the stock market after certain number of years of being classified as upper layer. Do not impose these kind of conditions. That's the reason this concept of scale-based regulation was there in the discussion. The framework is part of the broader direction by Securities Exchange Board of India to regulate NBFCs. First statement is wrong. Second statement, the primary aim of SBR framework is to regulate regulatory arbitrage and ensure a more robust financial system. Second statement is correct. Third statement, the SBR framework categorizes NBFCs into 3 layers. No, this is wrong, into 4 layers. So, only the second statement is true. Right option would be option A. Question number 26. With reference to alternative investment funds, consider the following statements. Now, AIFs, please understand, the concept of AIF is very novel in India, very new type of an investment model in India. Earlier we had mutual funds, or even today we have mutual funds. If you want to invest, you can invest in bank deposits, you can invest in the stock market, etc. But there are certain class of investors, let's say very rich investors, high net worth individuals. There are certain class of investors, hedge funds, let's say sovereign wealth funds, etc., which rather than they themselves directly investing in the market, would pool in their resources, would basically provide their resources to an asset management company. And this company would simply collect these resources and invest in the market. Such a model is basically referred to as alternate investment funds, AIF. Now, it refers to any privately pooled investment fund from the domestic sources only. Statement 1 is wrong. Why? Can it be only domestic market? That is, the funding, can it come only from the domestic market? No, it can come from the foreign market as well. Currently, they are not regulated in India by any agency. This statement is also wrong. The AIFs come under the regulation of Securities Exchange Board of India, and the SEBI guidelines divide the AIFs into 3 categories, category 1, 2 and category 3. So, both the statements are wrong. Right option for question number 26 will be option D, neither 1 nor 2. 27. Consider the following statements regarding the prepaid instruments in India. Basically, which one of the following is correct in respect of the above statements? 2 statements are given. You will have to look at both of the statements. According to the new pattern of UPSC, this question has been provided. Then you will have to basically find out whether both the statements are correct or one of them is correct. If both are correct, are both of them related to each other or not related to each other, etc. Let's start. Statement 1, prepaid payment instruments are not covered under Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. Now, before I discuss whether the statement 1 is correct or not, let me give you the basic idea of a prepaid instrument, PPI, prepaid instrument. These are the kind of instruments which are issued either by the banks or the non-banking financial companies, wherein the authority which is issuing the instrument, the amount of money is already loaded onto the instrument. The amount of money which is there in the instrument, which let's say the PPI is issued to you, and this PPI will have a value of let's say 5,000 or let's say 2,000 rupees. You can use this PPI in the market to purchase a certain goods or services for conducting transactions. That is basically idea of a prepaid instrument. Now look at the statement here. Prepaid payment instruments are not covered under the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. Statement 1 is correct. Statement 1 is correct. It's not covered under DSCGC. But please understand, there is a committee. The reason why this has been provided in the form of question is, there is a committee, the BP Kanungo Committee. Remember the name of the committee, BP Kanungo Committee, right? An internal committee which was set up by Reserve Bank of India. The BP Kanungo Committee has recommended that this kind of a coverage of insurance must be provided for PPI as well. Reason is very simple. Just like keep money in my bank account, I am keeping money in the form of PPI instrument. So there should be an insurance coverage provided even for the PPI instrument. So statement 1 is correct. Right now these are not covered. These instruments can be issued by both banking as well as non-banking institutions. Yes, both the statements are true. But look at the explanation. Do you think the statement 1 and statement 2 both of them are connected? both of them are not connected, which basically means both 1 and 2 are correct and 2 is not the correct explanation of statement 1. So, question number 27, B is the right option. 28. Consider the following statements with reference to Index of Industrial Production, IIP. Now, whenever you talk about aggregates or indicators, the two very important indicators are one, Index of Industrial Production, and the second one is ICI, Index of 8 core industries. In case of Index of Industrial Production, there are three groups, that is the number of items are there. All these items are divided into three groups: manufacturing, mining and electricity. The highest weightage is given for manufacturing, please remember this. So, Index of Industrial Production, IIP. Now, look at the statements. IIP measures the overall industrial production in the country for manufacturing activities only. Underline the term only. Is it measuring industrial production only in the manufacturing? No, that is wrong. Apart from the manufacturing, there is mining, there is electricity. So, the first statement is wrong. Second statement, it is published for every month by the Central Statistical Organization under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Yes. The second statement is true. It is this authority which publishes the Index of Industrial Production. But more importantly, please remember this, the base year for the measurement of Index of Industrial Production is 2011 and 2012. The 8 core industries covered in the Indian of 8 core industries constitutes more than 50% of the weights of items included in the IIP. The third statement is wrong. It does not constitute, right, 50%, it is somewhere around 38%. So, first statement is wrong, third statement is wrong, second statement is true. In fact, before somebody will basically correct me, earlier it used to carry a different weightage under the IIP, that is ICI. Today, like I said earlier, 38%, today it carries a weightage of 40%. So, second statement is correct, first and third are wrong. So, question number 28, right option will be option A, only one is correct. Question number 29, consider the following statements. The total liabilities of the Government of India include liabilities under the National Small Saving Fund, NSSF. Question number 29, statement 1 is correct. It is correct. Sir, how it is correct? Show me what is this idea of a total liability. Let me explain to you. Whenever you talk about liabilities, please understand, liability of Government of India essentially means, and again the term total liability, it essentially means how much is the overall money for which Government of India is held responsible. The overall amount of money for which Government of India will be held responsible. Sir, what do you mean by held responsible? If Government of India will borrow from the market today, if they borrow from the market, is Government of India liable for this amount of money? Yes. If government will borrow indirectly, again not directly, indirectly, that is basically under the concept of off-budget borrowing, is Government of India responsible for repayment of this off-budget borrowing? Yes, this is basically covered under the concept of extra budgetary resources. If Government of India has collected certain amount of money under the concept of public account, NSSF, National Small Savings Fund, who is responsible? Who is liable for the repayment of this amount of money? Again, Government of India. So, whenever you talk about the total liabilities, I repeat, the total liabilities, the components will be public debt. One will be the public debt, second one will be the public account, right, extra budgetary resources, etc. If you put together all of these, what you get is the idea of a total liabilities. So, come to the statement 1 here. The total liabilities of the Government of India includes liabilities under the small savings funds. Statement 1 is correct. The general government debt only consists, underline the term only, consists of debt incurred by the central government. No, statement 2 is wrong. When you say general government debt, please remember, the general government debt consists of two components. One, central government debt as well as the state government debt. So put together the debt of both the center as well as the state, you will get general government debt. So first statement is true, second statement is wrong. Right option will be option C. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Question number 30 now. Consider the following statements about Udan scheme. Udan basically stands for Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik. Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik. Now the basic background to this is, government back in the year 2016 launched a policy called as National Civil Aviation Policy, NCAP. Under the National Civil Aviation Policy, Government of India opined that, or basically stated that, only a small fraction of population in India and a small fraction of the cities in India are connected by the serving airports. Serving essentially means sufficient number of flights are operating from these cities, sufficient infrastructure is already present in the airport, etc. So that was the argument, and Government of India, in order to ensure that the airports which are already there, right, let's say utilization will improve, more and more flight services would be provided, etc., introduced the policy called as Udan scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik, or else it is also referred to as Regional Connectivity Scheme, RCS, Regional Connectivity Scheme. It is a self-financing scheme to develop the regional aviation market. Yes, self-financing for a very simple concept. A fund was established under the scheme, Regional Connectivity Fund, and government would collect a certain amount of charges from other airports, use the fund and provide viability gap funding for the other airports which are covered under Udan scheme. So first statement, is it a self-financing? Yes. It focuses only on, underline the term only, on improving interconnectivity of the states. No, within the states, across the states, etc. Second statement is wrong. Third, it envisages providing connectivity to unserved and underserved airports of the country through the revival of existing airstrips and airports. Right. Third statement, question number 30, right. Basically unserved as well as underserved. Fourth one, it's solely dedicated to offering last mile connectivity to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. This statement is wrong. Why? Under multiple iterations of Udan scheme, Udan 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, etc., different coverages have been provided. In certain cases, tourism cities have been covered. In certain cases, northeastern states have been covered, etc. So to begin with, yes, the objective was to cover the tier 2 and tier 3. But over a period of time, many iterations of Udan have been launched by the government, where they have basically focused on other cities as well. So fourth statement is wrong. Question number 30, two of them are correct. Option B is the right one. 51 now. Consider the following statements. GIFT. City is India's first IFSC under the Special Economic Zones Act of 2005. Now what is this GIFT? Please understand, in the state of Gujarat, we have identified one region, and under this region or in this region, under the Special Economic Zones Act, SEZ Act, under the Special Economic Zones Act, we have established a city, and this city is basically called as Gift City. Gift City IFSC. And again, to be very precise here, the Gift City has a component of domestic tariff area. It also has a special economic zone. Somewhere around 260 acres is a special economic zone. Again, don't worry about the numbers, focus on the concept here. Is it India's first IFSC? Yes, that is absolutely correct. And by the way, what do you understand by the term IFSC here? International Financial Services Center. Even in the domestic market, banks are there, insurance companies are there, stock market is there, etc. Financial services are being provided by many institutions within India. But what is the point of going to this city and establishing the centers or establishing a center where the similar services are provided, such as banking, such as insurance, stock market, etc.? Argument is simple. Because this is a special economic zone, yes, easy, lot of tax incentives are provided in the special economic zone. So first statement is correct. Second statement, the International Financial Services Center Authority IFSCA was established under the provisions of SEC Act 2005. No, it was established under IFSC Act itself. Third one, a financial institution set up in the IFSC and permitted or recognized by the Government of India is treated as a resident under the Foreign Exchange Management Regulation. Very technical statement. Understand this, because you are operating in the special economic zone. Whenever you talk about special economic zone, the zone itself will be treated as a foreign territory in terms of application of rules. And because you are operating in the SEC, you will not be treated as a resident, you will be treated as a non-resident. So 51, third statement is wrong. Right option is option A, only one is correct. 52, consider the following statements regarding the scheme for creation of infrastructure for agro-processing clusters, APC. Now, what is the basic idea for agro-processing clusters? And in the last 1 year, this was there in the newspaper related to one of the particular states in the northeastern region of India. Now, what is this agro-processing cluster? Before APC, Government of India under a scheme, that is umbrella scheme of Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana, had launched a scheme, Mega Food Park, MFP, Mega Food Park. Under Mega Food Park, objective was we are going to promote and develop lot of these food parks across India, which will attract investments, which will add to, right, let's say food processing value addition in India, which will generate jobs, which will contribute to capital formation, etc. But over a period of time, we realized the performance of MFPs is not up to the expectation. And that's a precise reason the Government of India has discontinued the model of Mega Food Park, and in its place, we have introduced the agro-processing cluster scheme. The Ministry of Food Processing and Industries is implementing this scheme under the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Statement 1 is incorrect. It is not under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. It is under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. Under the scheme, pre-cooling chambers or ripening chambers are created as a part of cluster approach in the processing units. Yes, look at the statement there. It is basically promoting the infrastructure development. And in food processing, what kind of infrastructure you require? You require, right, packaging infrastructure. You require, right, let's say pre-cooling chambers, ripening chambers, etc. So that is being promoted under the APC. Projects under this scheme can revive grants in aid up to 25 crore. Factual statement wrong. It is up to 10 crore rupees. It is up to 10 crore. So question number 52, right option will be option A. Only one of them is correct. 75. Consider the following statements regarding the Payments Infrastructure Development Fund. How many of the above statements are correct? What is the idea of a PIDF and why this is there in the newspaper? PIDF is a scheme which has been promoted, implemented by Reserve Bank of India. Under this, RBI simply says there are certain cities in India, tier 3 to tier 6 cities, wherein people who want to use digital payments, they are interested, but sufficient infrastructure is not available. For example, let's say I am living in a place where I want to use a debit card to conduct a transaction, but here in this city or in this particular place, the shopkeepers do not have a swiping machine or point of sales, hand hold or hand machine like this. So in such situations, argument is under PIDF, the funds would be utilized to promote development, promotion of the public infrastructure, or let's say payments infrastructure, not public, payments infrastructure would be promoted. Right. So this particular scheme has been extended very recently. That's the reason the question has been asked. So question number 75, it is managed and administered by Reserve Bank of India, primarily launched to facilitate and subsidize the development of payment acceptance infrastructure in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. You apply common sense, you will realize this. You don't need to promote in the tier 1 and tier 2. Why? These are very large cities. People anyways will be demanding this kind of infrastructure, and the shopkeepers and other sellers, the other parties already have lot of infrastructure. So it is tier 3 to tier 6. First statement is wrong. Beneficiaries of PM Swanidhi scheme and PM Vishwakarma scheme are also covered under the scheme. Yes, this was announced very recently. They are covered under the scheme now. It provides financial assistance to banks and non-bank financial companies for the deployment of point of sale terminals and Aadhaar enabled biometric devices in eligible regions. So, statement 3 is also correct. Just if you look at the statements, you realize it. This will be natural objectives of the scheme. So, 2 and 3 are right. Right option for question number 75 will be option B. 2 of them are correct. 76. With reference to account aggregators, consider the following statements. How many of the above statements are correct? Now, before I discuss the statements, what do you understand by the term account aggregator? Account aggregator, please understand the importance of it. Imagine I want to apply for a loan. Now, before applying for a loan, or even when I apply for a loan, the bank would ask a lot of information, lot of documentation from me. They would ask a documentation, right, X. They would ask a documentation Y, salary slip, previous loans taken, if there is a NOC issued for that, etc., etc., etc. There is a very lengthy process that is generally followed. Now, instead of that, what if whatever financial data, my financial data, whatever it is there, it is available at a centralized system. So, according to the requirement of the bank, according to the requirement of any other authority, any other institution, according to the requirement, and with my consent, what if this database is shared with the institution? So, don't you think it will become easier for the whole process to be completed? It will become very easier for the other authorities to get access to data rather than running behind multiple documentation processes. It will be easier for me to submit this kind of a data because there is a centralized system now. To address this issue itself, to promote this kind of a easy availability of or easy conducting of these kinds of processes, RBI has proposed the model of account aggregator. It is a RBI regulated non-bank financial company engaged in the business of providing the service of retrieving or collecting financial information pertaining to the customer. Yes, it can transfer data from one financial institution to another without the consent of the customer. Without you giving any approval, can they share your data, financial data, very sensitive data to somebody else in the market? Absolutely no, that is not allowed. At present in India, that is account aggregators, is available only for individual consumers. No, this is available for both individuals as well as the institutions or the corporates. So, second is wrong, third one is wrong. Question number 76, A is the right option. 77. The term windfall tax, as often heard in the news, describes which among the following? Very often in the newspaper you will come across the term windfall tax. The government has increased the windfall tax on an oil company, on oil marketing companies. It has decreased the windfall tax by so many rupees, etc., etc. What is the basic argument of a windfall tax? There are oil marketing companies, that is oil companies in India, which are sourcing the crude oil from Russia at, let's say, lower prices, which has happened in the past. They are sourcing the crude oil from Russia at a lower price, and that was possible earlier for a simple reason. The G7 group of countries, that is the Western economies, had imposed a restriction, sanctions over Russia. They were not able to sell this crude oil to others in the market. So, India was able to purchase the crude oil at a cheaper price. Now, when you purchase it at a cheaper price, process it, refine it, and you export it at a very higher price. So, obviously, the companies which are involved in the process would be making a huge amount of a profit. So, because of certain external event, you as an oil company, you are making huge amount of a profit. It is not because of your policy. It is not because you are doing something. It is predominantly because of external event. So, the argument is, right, it is a windfall tax, right, it is a type of a tax which is imposed on the companies that earn unexpectedly high profits due to external circumstances. Absolutely true. Now, before I go forward, please understand, in the context of the oil companies, lot of discussion is there in the current affairs. For example, right, what about the pricing of oil companies in India? Oil marketing companies are there. For example, you must have heard of Bharat Petroleum, Indian Oil, etc. These kind of oil marketing companies are there. So who will decide the pricing for the oil companies? Is it the government which will decide the pricing? Is it right the companies which are going to decide the pricing, etc.? Please remember, in case of India, we follow a methodology called as dynamic pricing. We follow a methodology which is called as dynamic pricing. And in case of, or in the context of dynamic pricing, it is the companies which are selling the oil decide their prices. It is them who will decide the prices. Of course, there is a formula for that. They will use the formula and decide the prices. However, can you simply say that it is purely market driven in India? Is it purely the market driven policy? Answer is no. Why? Central government has its own taxation on this. States also have their own taxes on this. I am discussing this for a very simple reason. There is a concept which is there in the current affairs, rationalization of GST. Rationalization of GST. In fact, there is a committee also. The committee is headed by Mr. Khanna. Please remember this. There is a committee which is headed by Mr. Khanna which has been asked to give recommendations regarding rationalization GST. And one of the areas, or let's say one of the commodities or group of commodities that they are considering out of totally 1200 plus is basically the fuel prices. Reason being, despite so much being discussed, fuel prices in India even today right now, these do not attract a GST. There is no GST on the fuel prices. Center has its own tax, states have their own tax. Right, so that's the reason this is there in the current affairs. Please be very, very careful. Apart from this, one more very important term, laundromat countries. There was a report which was published last year regarding this. Please remember the term laundromat countries. India has been identified as one of the laundromat countries, by the way. What is the argument there? With Russia-Ukraine war, with Russia invading Ukraine or attacking Ukraine, as earlier mentioned, the G7 group of countries imposed sanctions. And when G7 group of countries imposed sanctions, many of these European countries were not allowed to purchase crude from Russia. On the other side, Russia, in order to continue its attacks, continue the military exercises as they call it as, needed money. So what did happen after that? What actually was the outcome of this? Russia was able to sell the crude at a cheaper price to India. India paid money to Russia. Russia is able to use this money to continue its military operations. In a nutshell, they are generating revenue. And on the other side, India, which has purchased this at a cheaper price, is refining this, is exporting this to many of these other countries, including those countries which are not directly purchasing from Russia. Which also means these countries which are purchasing from India, essentially they are ensuring that the money is going to Russia. The money is basically traveling from India to Russia or going from India to Russia. That is the outcome of this. And that's the reason these particular countries which purchased from Russia, these were referred to as laundromat countries. The crude oil is being purchased, purified and then sold to other countries or refined, sold to other countries, generate revenues, and this revenue is being basically transferred to the country Russia. Done? So this is one more concept which is there in the context of a windfall tax, crude oil, petrol, diesel, etc. Please be very, very careful. Question number 78. Consider the following statements regarding the PM E-Bus Seva scheme. PM E-Bus Seva scheme. The scheme has been launched by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Right. So first statement, question number 78. First statement is wrong. Right. Why? This is not the scheme which is launched by the Ministry of Road Transportation. It is launched by Ministry of Urban Development. Okay, so first statement is wrong. And by the way, please be very careful, which is a nodal ministry. Reason being, whenever you talk about schemes, this is the last leg of your preparation. I would recommend focus on certain important areas of the scheme. That is one, what was the launch year? Which is the launch year of the scheme? Important. If there is any pilot project which has been launched for implementation of the scheme. Third one, which is the nodal ministry. which is the nodal ministry for the scheme. Important, please remember, memorize that. And the fourth one, right, basically the funding. Basically the concept of funding, is it 100% funded by the center? If it is 100% funded by the center, obviously it will become, or it will be part of central sector scheme. What if it is a centrally sponsored scheme? How much is the funding? Is it 90:10? Is it 75:25? Is it right 60:40? Is it 50:50? What is the funding pattern? That's also very, very important. Okay. So these are certain very important areas. Please be aware of this. Okay. Second statement. The scheme would be completely funded by the central government to aid the carbon emission in the transportation sector. Point number one, please remember this. One of the areas which contributes very high emissions to overall emissions in India is transport sector. And Government of India, and that's the reason you must have seen Government of India trying to implement various schemes in the transportation sector in order to reduce the emissions. For example, in case of railways, Government of India set up a target of having zero emissions, net zero emission by 2030. In case of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, etc., government has launched a FAME initiative, FAME 1 over, FAME 2 over now. There is a discussion with the new government, there will be a FAME 3 as well. Right. So, I hope you understand one of the areas which is contributing mainly to emissions in India is transportation. So, Government of India is implementing various policies, various measures in order to cut down, in order to reduce the emissions. Okay. So, a scheme would be completely funded. Is it completely funded? Absolutely no. The scheme is being covered under the PPP, Public Private Partnership, where certain assistance would be provided by the government, rest of it has to come from the other party or the other signatory to the concessional agreement. So, second statement is also wrong. So, question number 78, right option will be option D, neither 1 nor 2. Question number 79 now. Consider the following statements about government's e-marketplace. Government e-marketplace. Now, what is this government e-marketplace? In short, this is called as GEM. Now, basic idea for government e-marketplace is, earlier, before GEM was introduced, earlier what used to happen, if a government ministry or a department wants to procure something from the market, so something means what? There are various ministries under Government of India, public sector undertakings are there under Government of India. They would obviously require lot of goods, lot of, let's say, right, materials from the market. So, earlier all of them used to conduct their own operations to procure these from the market. And the problem related to such a kind of procurement was, there was no transparency in the system. What if there is a corruption? As a result of this, government expenditure would be higher. Government would be spending more and more amount of money. But on the other side, right, the people, or let's say the companies, not the people, companies who are right producing, let's say, right quality material, superior quality material, as a result of such kind of opaque procurement procedures, they would be on a losing end. Government would be on a losing end, because if I procure from a seller A, company A, I could have procured at 8 rupees per unit. But because there is no transparency in the process, I procured it from someone else at price, right, let's say 10 rupees. So, government's expenditure would be higher. In order to address all of these particular issues, the government introduced the model of government e-marketplace. And what is the benefit of government e-marketplace? Now, the process has been digitized. Digitized in the sense, the government, whenever they want to procure something, they will procure it through the government e-marketplace. In fact, ONDC, the platform of ONDC, there is also listing regarding the ONDC in the GEM website itself or the platform itself. This has promoted transparency. This has promoted efficiency. This has ensured that there is no, right, let's say, corruption in the system. Right seller, right quality, right quantity is being purchased by the government. Right. So, this is basically the model of government e-marketplace. any resident individual can register with the platform as a primary user. Can an individual be registered? No, this is not allowed. Both the goods and services can be procured by the state and central government through the platform. Yes, this is allowed. In fact, very recently there is a discussion, various governments want to list their projects, construction projects, infrastructure projects, they want to source it through the GEM platform itself. The platform has a feature of a dynamic pricing. Statement is true, but by the way, what do you understand by the term dynamic pricing? Dynamic pricing essentially means whenever the situation changes, whenever the prices in the market will change, the price in the platform will also automatically get adjusted. That is basically the argument or the concept of dynamic pricing. So, is there a dynamic pricing provided under the ENAM platform? Answer is yes, it is also provided under the ENAM platform. So, first one is wrong, second is correct, third is correct. Right option for question number 79 will be option B, only 2 of them are correct. So, these are the various questions that appeared in the previous or let us say the recent mock test. Next discussion will be taken up by Mukesh sir and he will be taking up questions from geography area. All the best to all of you, right. We will join again on the day of the UPSC examination with a live discussion. Take care, have a great day.
Hello, good afternoon to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the discussion of the questions which have appeared in the prelims mock test from the area of geography and environment ecology. Now, along with all of the questions, we shall try to understand that what can be the approach that you can use even when it comes to factual questions, what can be the approach that you can put to use when it comes to the same question appearing in the exam hall. So, without further ado, let us initiate the discussion and we start the discussion with the first question. And the first question is associated with the aspect of current affairs and it is a dynamic portion. This is a match the following kind of a question where you have to match the volcanoes which have appeared or which have erupted in recent times and the country where they are situated in. So, in the previous year or in the past 1.5 years, you have had eruptions in a particular area of the globe. And by a particular area of the globe, we mean the Pacific Ring of Fire. So, the Pacific Ring of Fire is where you had a lot of eruptions, including Mount Ibu, Mount Merapi, all of these, right. So, Pacific Ring of Fire, along with that in the region of the Mediterranean belt. So, these two, you can expect questions associated with that as well. So, Mount Merapi in Mongolia, this is incorrect. Mount Merapi is situated where? In the region of Indonesia. So, the first statement is incorrectly matched. Second, Hunga Tonga volcano and it is given United States of America. This is incorrect. Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai has been a volcanic eruption in the southern part of Pacific Ocean. And in the southwestern part of Pacific is where you have the kingdom of Tonga situated. So this is where it is situated in the region of Tonga Islands. And here you basically had two of the volcanic eruptions, Hunga Tonga and Hunga Hapai. Now both of them actually merged into the single one when you had a massive eruption, one of the strongest eruptions of the past 50 years, which occurred in the southwestern region of Pacific during the time period between December 2021 to January 2022. So that is why this has been important, not only because of the eruption per se, but the amount of carbon dioxide and the ash cloud which was released by them. That is what makes it important. So this is also incorrectly matched. Then you have Mount Ibu. Mount Ibu is also situated in Indonesia. It is not situated in Malaysia. So here Indonesia and the Indonesian islands, they form a part of the Pacific Ring of Fire. So Pinatubo, then for example Mount Tal, then Mount Merapi, Mount Ibu, these are some of the active volcanoes across this area. Then Mount Vesuvius in Italy, this is correctly matched. So here how many of the above pairs are correctly matched? The correct answer is going to be A, that is only 1. Now, after that, moving on to the second question, which is about wind shear. Wind shear, what is it? It basically is a factor which denotes the difference in wind velocity in between various layers. What do we mean by that? For example, let's suppose you have the ground surface. Now, near the ground surface, you have a wind velocity. Let's suppose you think about the wind velocity to be around 50 km per hour. Now, there will be wind movement in the upper atmosphere as well. In the upper region of troposphere as well, you will have a wind movement. Now, if this wind movement is different from the wind movement closer to the surface, that is wind shear. That is the difference in wind velocity at various altitude. So ideally, the difference should not be very much when it comes to the development of tropical cyclones. That is where you come across the term wind shear. For the development of a tropical cyclone, what you actually need is a similar velocity of wind closer to the ground surface and a very similar velocity of wind at an upper altitude as well. Now that helps to develop the entire cloud formation. If let's suppose in a particular area, if let's suppose we consider the cloud formations developed across the eye, right? Cloud formations developed across the eye during the cyclone. Now, in case the upper wind velocity is very high, let's suppose the upper wind velocity is 250 km per hour, then in that case, will you ever experience the development of this thick cumulonimbus clouds? No, these winds will carry away all the cloud formation. There won't be any latent heat of condensation which will be accumulated and further intensifying the region of the tropical cyclone. So the entire tropical cyclone will dissipate. The region might receive rainfall, but it won't be a development of a tropical cyclone in totality. That is where this concept comes into place. Now let us take a look at the statements associated with wind shear that will help us reach the answer. So wind shear is defined as a change in wind speed or wind direction over a vertical or a horizontal distance. This is correct. Now, why is there a change at the lower elevation and at an upper elevation? There is always going to be a difference. It is never going to be the case that the wind moving at the surface is having the same velocity as compared to the wind moving at an upper altitude. There is going to be a difference. But why is it so? Because the wind blowing closer to the surface experiences frictional drag. Frictional drag. That is the force of friction, the force of resistance which acts upon this particular wind owing to the resistance on the ground surface. So here, this is why wind shear comes into place. Higher vertical wind shear means difference in wind velocity across the vertical level. Higher vertical wind shear is necessary for the development of hurricanes. Hurricanes are tropical cyclones. So for the tropical cyclones, you need a lower wind shear, not a higher wind shear. So this is incorrect. The presence of stronger than usual vertical wind shear during El Nino years creates more favorable conditions for hurricane development in the Atlantic basin. Now this statement is a derivation of the second statement itself. So the presence of stronger than usual wind shear, that in itself will never let the hurricanes to get created, right? Now this statement says it is more favorable condition for hurricane formation. Regardless of the fact that whether El Nino creates a stronger wind shear or not, when you have a stronger than usual wind shear, hurricanes won't be created. Having said that, when we have the case of El Nino, in those situations, in the region of Atlantic in particular, you have a very high speed of higher elevation winds closer to the top level of troposphere. So these high altitude winds, when they move with such great velocity, they don't allow the hurricane development. That is why El Nino years are marked by, when you have El Nino years, marked by a lack of hurricane development. Okay, a lack of hurricane development. Why? Because of very strong high altitude wind, very strong upper wind movement. Okay, that is why. So the third statement is also incorrect. So how many of the above statements are correct? The answer here is going to be A, that is only 1. Okay. Now, then the next question, which is a bit factual, but here if you have noticed the areas in news, you should be able to get it correct. Now, Chenab River passes through the Pong Dam Lake. Pong Dam Lake has been in news owing to the recommendations about declaring it as a wetland of importance and declaring it as a protected area. Now, Pong Dam is across river Beas. It is not across river Chenab. It is across river Beas. Now, this Pong Dam has been in news because of the seasonal variation in the water level. Many of the areas in that region of the reservoir, in many of the areas, you experience cultivation and agricultural activities to be carried on. So that is why you don't have that being carried on, or the locals are protesting or resisting the declaration of the entire region as a protected area, because their cultivational activities will get hampered by it. So that is why it was in news. So the first statement is incorrect. Bharatpuya River feeds the Sastankota Lake. Now, Bharatpuya River is a small river which drains into the Arabian Sea. It is a west flowing river of Peninsula Plateau, and it basically drains after passing through the region of the Malabar Plains. It drains into Arabian Sea. It does not feed into the Sastankota Lake, which is a fresh water. Then river Bhima passes through the Lonar Lake that formed by meteorite impact in the Deccan Trap region. Now, Lonar Lake is a geoheritage site. Geoheritage site, when we talk about, let's suppose, regions such as St. Mary's Island off the coast of Karnataka, off the coast of Udupi in Karnataka, Lonar Lake, these are geoheritage sites. Means they represent some unique geographical features which tell us about the past history. When we talk about Lonar Lake, it is very unique because it is the only known evidence that we have of a meteorite impact on basaltic rocks. Meteorite impact would have happened on basaltic rocks in various areas, but majority of those regions have been eroded, have been weathered, and the evidence is not present anymore. But in the case of Lonar Lake in Maharashtra, you will have that evidence on the basaltic rock. That is why it is a geoheritage site. Now, river Bhima, which is a tributary of river Krishna, has got no relation, no interlinking with the Lonar Lake. So here, how many of the statements given above are correct? The answer is D. That is, none of them are correct. Moving on to the next question associated again with the places in news. Now, consider the following statements. The Suez Canal links the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. This is correct. Suez Canal, which was constructed in the 1850s, around 1859, provides the connectivity and a passage through the region of Mediterranean into the region of Red Sea, and through the area of Bab al-Mandeb, eventually through Gulf of Aden, the merchant vessels move into the region of Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea. So this first portion is correct. Panama Canal connects the Atlantic Ocean in the east to the Pacific Ocean in the west. This is also true. Panama Canal, it divides the Isthmus of Panama. Isthmus of Panama is the land portion, land mass which connects the north and the southern portion of Americas. So there, the Panama Canal again provides the ease of passage. So this is also correct. Then, North Pacific Sea Route connects Western Europe and North America with the scattered Pacific islands via the Panama Canal. This is actually a description of the South Pacific Sea Route. Okay, South Pacific Sea Route. When we talk about the North Pacific Sea Route, it basically provides connectivity of the ports across the region of Americas, North Americas, with the region of Asia. So it moves slightly to the north into the region closer to the Bering Sea, but not exactly in the Bering Sea, into the northern Pacific, and then moves into the region of the Asian ports. So here the third statement is actually incorrect. So here, how many of the above statements are correct? The correct answer is going to be B, that is 2 of them, they are correct. Okay. Here the Suez Canal has been in news. Along with that, Bab al-Mandeb and Strait of Hormuz, you have to know that which water bodies it connects. Okay. For example, Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman. Bab al-Mandeb connects the Red Sea with the region of Gulf of Aden. So these water bodies you have to keep in mind. And if you take a look at the current affairs for the past 18 months, then even when we talk about Bosphorus Straits, Dardanelles Strait, those are also relevant for your examination this particular year. Now, moving on to the next question. Structural plains are mainly formed by the uplift of a part of the sea floor or continental shelf. This is correct. These structural plains are created due to the epeirogenic forces, where epeirogenic as in endogenic forces, due to which sometimes the land which has been underwater has been pushed up. Now, such areas generally are very rich in fossil fuel deposits, because it is in these marine areas where you would have had lot of various marine animals dying and their deposits getting created. So that is why over a long period of time of millions of years, these are the centers and the sources of fossil fuels. Such structural plains you can find around the region of Gulf of Mexico, around the region of the eastern, southeastern part of US, rich areas of fossil fuel. So this is correct. A penny plain. Penny plain means almost featureless. You don't have many of the undulations there. Many of the variations are not present. It is almost flat and featureless. The penny plains oftentimes will have one or the other isolated landmarks out there. These are known as monadnocks. Okay, these are known as monadnocks. So basically, these penny plains, they are created as a result of erosion. Erosion by what? Erosion generally by the rivers. River plains and the river streams in that area, they flatten the entire zone. So that is why penny plain is a low relief plain which is formed as a result of stream erosion, is a correct statement. You will find such penny plain deposits or such penny plain formations in areas of North America, in areas of Europe as well. You will find these penny plains in existence. Then, drift plains are formed by deposition of sediments in a lake. Deposition of sediments in a lake creates lacustrine plains, right? They are known as lacustrine deposits. Drift plains are generally created as a result of glacial deposits. Glacial deposits. Such kind of plains you will find to be present in the region of Western, Northern Europe. Because in the last ice age, you had such glacial deposits happening over the region of North America as well, and even in the region of Europe. Because of the glacial movement in that area, for example, in the region of North America, you have the Great Plains, right to the east of the Rockies, and to the west of the Appalachians, and to the west of the Great Lakes, you have the Great Plains, which is also known as the Corn Belt of the US. The Corn Belt of the US single-handedly is accountable for production of close to around 25% of global maize production. So that is why it is important in the economic parlance as well. So those are your drift plains, not the sediments in the lake. So this is incorrect. The Canadian Shield, that is to the north of the Great Lakes, the 5 Great Lakes that you have, and to the south of the Hudson Bay. In that region, you have the Canadian Shield. Canadian Shield and the West Siberian Plains are example of erosional plains. So these regions, which have been created as a result of volcanic eruption previously, now during multiple different ice ages, glacial erosion has almost flattened them, made them flat and featureless. So these are the case of erosional plains and the erosion carried as a result of glacial action. So here, how many of the above statements are correct? The answer is going to be C, that is 3 of them are correct. Now, then moving on to the next question. This is about the depositional features. Consider the following statements in context of depositional landform of wind, or what are known as aeolian landforms as well. Barchans form where the wind direction is constant and moderate, and where the original surface over which the sand is moving is almost uniform. What are barchans? Barchans are basically your crescent shaped dunes. If you take a look at the side profile of it, this is what they will appear to look like. Now, if you take a top view around it, the view is somewhat like this, a crescent shaped. Now, how are they created? These barchans, they are also created just like any other dune. Okay, initially you will have the barchans created just like this, but owing to the huge weight, the central portion undergoes a kind of a slip, undergoes a kind of a subsidence, as a result of which you will have 2 of the horns which are protruding, and they will be protruding in the direction of the wind. They gain a streamlined shape in the direction of the wind. So they form where the wind direction is constant and moderate, and where the original surface over which the sand is moving is almost uniform, is a correct statement. Then seaf dunes. Seaf dunes are long narrow ridges of sand, till here it is correct, that lie perpendicular to the direction of the prevailing winds. This is incorrect, because seaf dunes, they lie parallel to the direction of the wind movement. And when we talk about perpendicular to the wind movement, here you have dunes such as transverse dunes. Transverse dunes are created when the wind is basically, when the dune formation deposit is perpendicular to the wind movement. Then the thickest deposits of loess are found in Australia. This also is incorrect. Loess are what? You would have heard about loess plains, very rich in mineral deposits. So, when the wind erodes certain materials, the finest of these materials are carried over a very long distance, and then they are deposited over a plain area or a flat area. Just like when the glacier erodes something, it erodes and carries the tiny particles in the form of tillite or glacial till. When the river erodes some structure, it carries finer materials in the form of silt. Similarly, when the wind erodes certain structures, it carries the finer particles and the finer deposits. They are known as loess. So these loess plains in large amount and very thick deposits are to be found in the northwestern region of China. around the Xinjiang province of China, and this is very rich in various different types of minerals, rare earth elements as well. So here it is not to be found in Australia but in China, where certain deposits can have a depth of almost around 30 meters as well. So here how many of the above statements are correct? The answer is A, that is one only, that is the correct statement. Then consider the following gases. You have argon, helium, ozone, hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and you have to arrange them in terms of ascending order of their presence in the atmosphere. Now ideally it might turn out to be very difficult to memorize all of this, that which are the various different gases in which proportion. So ideally what I would suggest to you is that go for the demarcation in the sense that remember the top four in terms of the prominence. So the most prominent gas in the atmosphere is nitrogen, around 79%. Then comes oxygen, that is around 21%. Then comes argon, around 0.9%, and then comes carbon dioxide, around 0.04%. Okay, these are the top four. Remember these are easy to remember. This is something that you can learn. Now here we have to find it or arrange it in the ascending order. Ascending order as in the most dominant gas has to be arranged at last. So out of the available options, if you observe, the most dominant out of this will be argon. So argon has to be at last. So if you observe, these are the two where argon is at last. Then after that, carbon dioxide has to be second last. So carbon dioxide number 5 is the second last where? In option D. In option D you will find carbon dioxide is at second last, right? So that basically means that D 32451 is the correct order. So that means in the least proportion you will find the presence of ozone, followed by helium, followed by hydrogen, then followed by carbon dioxide, to be followed by argon. Okay. So rather than learning each and every individual of them, just remember the top four. Similar is the case when we talk about the types of salt which are present in the oceanic waters as well. There also up till CaSO4, calcium sulfate, the top four, that is something you can recall. Now moving on to the next question. The term Caucasus, often seen in news, roughly corresponds to which of the following region? You have the Caucasus Mountains as well, and Caucasus or the Caucasian race of population as well. So this largely is attributed to the region between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. So that is what the Caucasus region refers to, the region between the Black Sea and the Caspian. It is where you have a fold mountain in the form of Caucasus as well. Now these mountain formations continue beyond the Caspian in the form of Ural mountains. So that forms a continuity of divide between the region of Europe and the region of Asia. So Caucasus also forms a kind of a geographical divide between Europe and the region of Asia. Then moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements. Soil under vegetation cover receives heat more rapidly than the soil devoid of vegetation cover. This statement in itself is wrong. If you apply your normal logic, soil under vegetation cover will have the benefit of shade. So it won't receive heat that significantly. Whatever heat is received, it can be retained because of the presence of water vapor. But heat in itself to a greater amount will not be received because of the shade. So the first statement is incorrect. So that if you take a look at the options, only one option fits that criteria, and that is option D, where statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. What is statement 2? Vegetation cover absorbs much of the sun's heat and then prevents quick radiation from the earth, whereas the former radiates more rapidly. So this is correct. So the correct answer in this case is D, where 1 is incorrect and statement 2 is correct. Now, what is common between Maracaibo, then Eskira, Tripoli and Abadan? What is common between all of these? All these in their respective regions are what are known as oil ports. So when we talk about the different ports, there is a classification of ports as well based upon their utility. For example, You have one what is referred to as the oil port. Oil ports are those which are built and developed specifically to handle the import and the export of oil. So there you will have from the docks a large pipeline which is oftentimes laid out into slightly shallower waters where larger ships can berth, and from there oil is directly supplied through the pipeline into the tankage structures which are built. In India, you have oil ports such as Paradip, such as Mangalore. These are your known oil ports. Okay. Now, then you have other type of ports such as ports of call. Ports of call are those ports where you can have the access to the rest of the region by connectivity. But that is the port where the ships take a break oftentimes to restock, resupply, refuel, and also offload the goods which can then be supplied internally. For example, you have the Rotterdam port in Europe. Now, the ships offload their goods in the Rotterdam port, and from there through the inland navigation, through the river Rhine and through the other aspects and other modes, those materials are distributed throughout the region of Europe. Similarly, in India, you have the JNPT, the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust in Mumbai. That JNPT serves as the port of call in India. So, that is one of the other kind of port. Then you have the naval port, especially for the use of navy. For example, you have the Karwar port in the western coast of India to the south of Goa. Then you have the Cochin port. These are your naval ports. And then you also have what is known as the ferry port. Ferry ports are those particular kind of ports used for short distance travel, where people along with their vehicle, they climb on to the barges, and the barges move very slowly and they cross that small water body, and they reach the destination where the vehicles, the goods can be offloaded. For example, the Dover port in UK is the example of a ferry port, where people in UK, when they have to travel into Europe, they drive with their vehicles into the Dover port, they onboard the vehicle, and then from there the ferries, they transfer them to the port of Calais. The port of Calais in France then is used in order for internal transport in Europe. So here, what is common between Maracaibo, Eshkira, Tripoli and Abadan? These are basically oil ports which deal with the processing and the shipping of oil. Then, consider the following pairs. Here you have various different types of shifting cultivation and the region. So, shifting cultivation or the slash and burn cultivation is something which is observed in the tropics of Asia, Asia, Africa and even Latin America, where you have the shifting cultivation which is carried out, where you have natural resources of the region such as the soil fertility, amount of rainfall that is used. No artificial sources are given. This is a kind of a primitive subsistence agriculture. Primitive subsistence agriculture. Now, this is named differently in different regions. Okay. For example, in northeastern part of the country, it is known as jhum farming, right? So, here like that you have the various names associated and the region that they attribute to. So, Ladang. Ladang is a kind of a shifting cultivation observed in the region of Malaysia and even Indonesia. Malaysia, Indonesia. It is not in Mexico. Then you have Conuco. Now, Conuco is observed in the region of Venezuela, not in Vietnam. So, this is also incorrectly matched. Then you have Milpa. Milpa is a term used for shifting cultivation in the Central and the Latin American region. Okay, it is not used in Brazil. So, here this is also incorrect. So, how many of the above are correctly matched? The answer is D. That is, none of them are correctly matched. So, this is about the cultivation and the agricultural aspect, the factual portion which can be relevant. Sometimes UPSC throws these kinds of questions at you. Now, overall in the portion of geography, you would have observed that the questions per se, they are attributed to logic and the places in news if you are following current affairs. That should be your approach even when you go ahead and even when you solve the paper on the 16th, right? Now, Let us take a look at the questions which have appeared from the portion of environment ecology. Here also you will observe a kind of a similar trend developing. So, without further ado, let us take a look at the first question here. So, the first question again associated with a type of cultivation, an area which UPSC has explored previously as well, that is direct seeding of rice. Now, we have to understand that the traditional method of rice cultivation is where you observe flood irrigation technique. Flood irrigation is what? Let's suppose you have a farmland. Now, you flood the farmland with water and then you transplant the saplings of rice in that area. Now, these saplings of rice produce the organic matter and these organic matter are present in this water. When this water is lost, there is a lot of methane emission which is accrued along with it. So, that is why it is harmful and dangerous for the environment. For example, you will have excessive utility and utilization of the water resource as well. For example, in order to grow 1 kg of rice, the farmers oftentimes have to put in close to around 5,000 liters of water. 1 kg of rice, 5 kiloliter of water. So, what is the benefit of having such kind of a cultivation even if you are building buffer stocks? That is why you have new methodology of cultivation, that is the direct seeding of rice, where what is done is that without this flooding irrigation method, pre-germinated seeds or even non-germinated seeds, they are directly planted. So, when you have this direct seeding of rice, it is of two types. One is the wet seeding. Another is what is known as the dry seeding. Wet seeding is when you use the pre-germinated seeds. Pre-germinated seeds means that you would have taken those seeds into the nursery, you would have had saplings growing and then transplanting them into the farmland. And dry seeding, non-pre-germinated seeds, you use them. Okay. So, here it requires more water compared to the traditional transplanted rice cultivation. Incorrect. It does not involve any pre-germination of seeds. It is an absolute statement. So, that makes it incorrect here, because pre-germinated seeds can be used. So, here this is also incorrect. It is known for reducing methane emissions compared to the traditional method, that is the flood irrigation method. So, in comparison to that, it is known for reducing methane emissions. That is correct. So, the correct statement in this case is going to be A, that is only 1. Okay. Now, consider the following statements with reference to seaweeds. Seaweeds have been in use for the past 3 years now because of the impact and the effort and the research which has gone into the area for extracting the medicinal utility out of these seaweeds. So, seaweeds are a form of zooplankton? No, they are not. These are producer communities, these are not consumer communities. So, then agar is a type of a seaweed which is widely used in paper manufacturing. This is a correct statement. Seaweeds are highly suitable for the production of biofuel. Ethanol is one of those which can be produced. Second generation ethanol, etc., they can always be produced here. So, here how many of the statements are correct? The answer is B, that is 2 only. Here, even if you would know that seaweed, they are algal species, they are producer species, that in itself would have helped you get this question correct. Okay. Now, consider the following statements with regard to suspend response of organisms. Now, when organisms experience a hardship in their ecology or in their ecosystem, they carry out certain response mechanisms. One of the response is migration, where for temporary duration they actually, or for a permanent duration, they move from one region to another. They move from a region where you have the harsh climate or a harsh condition to a region where the conditions are very conducive. So, that is migration. Another response that they generate is that of suspend. Suspend means they are able to suspend their own metabolic activities till favorable conditions return. So, suspend is of 3 types. You have hibernation, which means a winter sleep to escape cold, frigid conditions, particularly in the polar areas. Many of the species go for hibernation. Then you have aestivation. Aestivation generally carried out, it is a summer sleep. Aestivation is known as the summer sleep. So here, in order to withstand the lack of water availability, lack of fluid availability, many of the species, they carry out the process of aestivation, generally observed in the desert and the semi-arid areas. That is where you have the lack of availability of water. And then you have what is known as diapause. Diapause is where the metabolism generally carried out by microscopic organisms. Diapause is where the metabolism is suspended indefinitely till the favorable conditions return, carried out by various species of planktons, various species of, for example, even when we consider water bear, they also carry out diapause sometimes. So, aestivation refers to temporary movement of organisms from stressful habitat to a more hospitable area? No. Aestivation is a summer sleep. Then, diapause is a state of animal dormancy, means the metabolic activities are not active anymore, due to adverse environmental conditions in which growth or development is suspended. This is actually correct. That is what is the description of diapause. So, which of the statements given above is or are correct? The answer is B, that is 2 only. Now, moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements with reference to the Bhadra Tiger Reserve. Now, Bhadra Tiger Reserve, in the region where you have river Bhadra. Where does river Bhadra drain to and drain from? So, Tunga and Bhadra are the two small streams which combine to form Tungabhadra, which in itself is a right bank tributary of river Krishna. It basically drains through the region of Karnataka. Now, that is a region which is rich in iron reserves as well. That is a region which is very rich in biodiversity as well. So, that is why Bhadra Reserve is oftentimes in use because of the biodiversity and the man-animal conflict. Now, it is located in the state of Andhra Pradesh, located in the state of Karnataka. Then Shola forest can be found in this tiger reserve. Now, actually in this tiger reserve, you will find a wide variety of vegetation, from moist deciduous to dry deciduous to some amount of Shola vegetation also, particularly the western parts. So, you will find this Shola vegetation in some amount. That is correct. The reserve is also designated elephant reserve. So, because of a large population of elephants along with the other herbivore and the carnivore animal in that area, it has been declared as an elephant reserve as well. So, how many of the above statements are correct? The correct answer is B, that is 2 of them are the correct statements. Now, consider the following statements about methanogens. Methanogens, these are the microscopic organisms which under hypoxic conditions, that is lack of oxygen, under those hypoxic conditions, they prevail, they utilize the organic matter and they end up producing methane as a consequence of that. So, methanogens produce methane as a metabolic byproduct in anoxic conditions. Anoxic means lack of oxygen, hypoxic condition. This is correct. They are commonly found in upper layers of oceans and surface soils. Apply your logic here. If the first statement is correct, second statement can never be correct. Why? Because the first statement talks about anoxic conditions, means lack of oxygen. But when we talk about upper layers of ocean, surface soil, means what? There you have availability of oxygen. So, can a microorganism which prevails in anoxic conditions, would it be found generally in these abundantly oxygenated areas? No. So, they are not found in these areas, they are rather found in saline lake formations underwater, underground, they are to be found in the wetlands at a lower level, etc. Then methanogens play a crucial role in carbon cycle. Yes, they help in decomposing the organisms also. So, they consume carbon, produce carbon in the form of methane. So, they form or they play a part in the carbon cycle. So, here how many of the statements are correct? Answer is B, that is only 2. Now, consider the following statements about global decarbonization accelerator. This Global Decarbonization Accelerator has been an initiative which has been taken in Conference of Parties 28 held in Dubai. This was a conference on United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So, this was a global decarbonization initiative where the various different carbon dioxide equivalents and other greenhouse gases which are emitted by the various countries, there you need to have a pause, you need to stop that. So, it was launched in 2015 at the UN Climate Change Conference. This is incorrect. It was a Paris Agreement which was launched in 2015. Primarily targets the reduction in water vapor emissions. No, greenhouse gas emissions are what are targeted, not the water vapor emissions. So, this is also incorrect. Oil and gas decarbonization charter is integral to the Global Decarbonization Accelerator. This is correct. Oil and gas is one of the major emitters of carbon and carbon dioxide equivalent. So, there the decarbonization charter has been prepared. So, here how many of the above statements are correct? The answer is A, that is only one. For this kind of a question, you need to keep yourself updated to what has been the outcome of COP27, which was held at Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, and what has been the outcome of COP28 held in Dubai. Okay. So, these outcomes, particularly Loss and Damage Fund, then Global River Cities Alliance, which has been an initiative launched by India, those become relevant and important. Now, then the next question. Consider the following statements. Residential envelope transmittance value, the RETV, is a metric that measures heat transfer through a building's envelope. That is correct. Basically, the various different residential buildings, the various different urban habitats, they also start emitting a lot of heat. And there you have the feature or the factor of an urban heat island. Now, the formation of urban heat island means the various different urban areas are experiencing a higher than average temperature, exaggerating the impact of water scarcity, heat waves, etc. That is why there has been a clamor call and a movement to move towards green buildings. And it is here where, under the aspect of the Eco-Niwas Samhita, right, here certain green building codes have been defined by the government of India, and the organization which is responsible for this is actually BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. It is the organization which is responsible for delineating these clauses. So, there RETV has been declared as one of the measuring parameters to indicate whether a region is adhering to green construction codes or not. Now, so the first statement is actually correct. Lower RETV values lead to warmer indoor environments and increased energy usage. This in itself appears to be incorrect. Lower transmittance value? No. When you have lower transmittance value, it should be cooler. So, here when you have a high RETV, that means the indoor temperature will be very high. So, the second statement is actually incorrect. So, here the correct answer is going to be C, that is statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Then moving on to the next question associated with compressed biogas. Compressed biogas is a fuel source, is an energy source which is produced as in a similar manner like how you produce biogas, right? Methane is the main dominant gas present here, and in this CBG you have organic wastes which are used, which are digested, and then this biogas is produced, and that is then gotten rid of various impurities, and then you have the CBG which is extracted out of it. So, CBG is produced from animal and plant waste and can directly replace CNG in vehicles. This is correct. Primary byproduct of CBG production is solid CO2. Now, when we talk about the CBG, you have various different byproducts, liquid CO2, solid CO2, you also have the organic wastes, etc. So, this is also a byproduct of it. This is correct. CBG and CNG have different chemical compositions, with CBG having a lower calorific value than CNG. So, they basically are similar in terms of chemical composition, and here the calorific value is almost again similar. So, here this is turning out to be incorrect, right. So, here the correct statement, the correct answer is going to be B, that is only 2. Okay. Now, consider the following: Nilgiri tar, Royal Bengal tiger, Indian rhino and lion-tailed macaque. How many of the above animal species are endemic to India? Endemic means to be found only in that region and nowhere else. That is something which we refer to as being endemic. So, Nilgiri tar, to be found in the region of the Shola vegetation in the Nilgiris, in the region of western Tamil Nadu, in the areas of northeastern Kerala. There you have the presence of Nilgiri tar. It is to be found only in the southern parts of India. It is a species of ungulate, and that is why Project Nilgiri tar has been initiated by the Tamil Nadu government, for which it is also the state animal, and there you have the research based activities being carried out under the Project Nilgiri tar for the conservation and also to understand their food habits, their reproductory habits, etc., so that a greater conservation can be carried out. So, here it is endemic, yes. Royal Bengal tiger, it is not endemic to India. Royal Bengal tiger is to be found in Bangladesh also, to be found in Bhutan also, and in the southern part of Nepal also. So, it is not endemic. Indian rhino to be found in the region of Assam, in the region of Bhutan, in the region of Nepal also. In the Tarai area of Nepal and the region of Uttar Pradesh, you will find this Indian rhino. So, this is also incorrect. Lion-tailed macaque is also to be found, a unique species to be found in the region of the Western Ghats, particularly in the southern part of India, only in that area. So, this is again a species which is endemic to India. So, how many of the above species are endemic? You have B, that is only 2, they are endemic to India. Now, the next question. Consider the following statements with reference to the net primary productivity of ecosystem. Net primary productivity is the overall organic production carried out by the producer community minus the energy used for the respiration activities and the internal body activities, that is net primary productivity. So, tropical rainforests have the highest net primary productivity amongst all terrestrial ecosystems. This is correct, because the vegetation, the producer community is so very wide, vivid and varied that you will have lot of this organic productivity. It is influenced by the availability of energy and nutrients, the nutrient cycle, the energy cycle, etc. is present in abundance. That is why the productivity is high. So, here both the statement 1 and 2 are correct, and 2 is the correct explanation of statement 1. So, the correct answer in this case is going to be A. Now, after that, the next question. Consider the following pollutants, which of them are organic pollutants. So, what do we mean by organic pollutants? Basically, those type of pollutants which are produced from organic products, byproducts of organisms, that is an organic pollutant. Generally, an organic pollutant will have the CH structure within them, right. So, out of these, you will find proteins and glycerol. They are the ones having that CH structure and produced as a result of organic processes and byproducts. When we talk about mercury and silica, they are largely natural in terms of, or they have a natural source. They are not produced by organisms out there. So, how many of the above are organic pollutants? The answer is B, that is only 2. Now, consider the following statements. It is about biopiracy, bioprospecting and biosafety. These are associated with the conservation of biological diversity, right, the Convention on Biological Diversity. So, this Convention on Biological Diversity, these terms are associated with that. When was this CBD arrived at? In 1992. Okay. So, biopiracy is the exploration of biological material for commercially valuable genetic and biochemical properties. Incorrect. Biopiracy is simple. Piracy we know, taking something in an unwilling manner where the holder of that property is not willing to give you something, but you take it nonetheless. So, in any particular area, let's suppose you are extracting their biological diversity, extracting the benefits out of the species of flora and fauna in that region without the local community getting any of the benefit whatsoever, that is biopiracy. Okay? So, biopiracy is not this, so this is incorrect. Bioprospecting is the commercial exploitation of traditional indigenous knowledge through the patent process. No. Bioprospecting, on the other hand, is what is written in statement 1. Prospecting, you are trying to analyze what is present there for later extraction though, but what is present there. So, when we say bioprospecting, it is an exploration of biological material in any particular area for commercial and viable exploration and extraction later on. But you are exploring that where what area or what resources are present. Then, biosafety refers to the prevention of large-scale loss of biological integrity, focusing both on ecology and human health. Safety required and associated with biodiversity and the impact of the biodiversity in that area. So, this is correct. So, how many of the statements given above are correct? The answer is A, that is only 1. Okay? Then, with reference to UN Forum on Forests, consider the following statements. So, UN Forum on Forests was arrived at in 2000 on the sidelines of the meeting of UN ECOSOC, right. So, UNFF was established as a subsidiary body of the United Nations Economic and Social Council in 2000. This is correct. Forest instrument is legally binding instrument on all types of forests. It is not legally binding. Recently, India highlighted that it has got the largest gain in forest in annual average forest area in the last decade. This is incorrect. India basically, if you even consider on a global level, it can be third. It is not the highest gain in forest. So, here this is incorrect. So, how many of the statements are correct here? Basically, A, that is only 1 of the statements is correct. Then, consider the following statements regarding constructed wetlands. Constructed wetlands are treatment systems that use natural processes to improve water quality. Correct? This is correct. Where by the processes of various bio-augmentation, etc., where let's suppose in a particular area, if there is a lot of impurity, you go and build an artificial wetland there, and there you allow the natural processes of bioremediation to get rid of the pollutants, to bind the pollutants and to make the region contamination free. They use biogeochemical and physical processes to remove organic matter and the nutrients of that region. This is also correct, and the correct answer here is A, that is both statements 1 and 2 are correct, and 2 is the correct explanation of statement 1. With reference to vultures, consider the following statements. Now, vultures are carcass feeders. Carcass feeders means they feed on the dead organisms and play a significant role in the natural mechanism of infection control. This is correct, because when we talk about vultures, they feed on the dead and the decaying flesh of the organisms. These are the scavenger community. Now, generally in the dead carcass, you will have varying different germs and pathogens which can germinate and can spread diseases. But vultures, over a period of evolutionary cycle, they have built an internal system itself which is resistant to these germs. So, that is why by consuming these dead organisms, they are able to get rid of the infectious nature of this carcass. So, this is correct. The use of diclofenac is responsible for the decline in vulture population in India and across the globe. Correct. A vulture restaurant has been set up in Jharkhand in a bid to conserve the fast dwindling population of vultures. So, in the region of Kodarma in Jharkhand, you basically have the establishment of a vulture restaurant. And it is not the first vulture restaurant, by the way. You have had various different vulture restaurants earlier established in the region of Pinjore, in the region of Maharashtra as well. So this is also correct. So here C, that is all three of the statements turn out to be correct regarding vulture conservation. Consider the following statements. Amount of nitrogen produced anthropogenically is more than the naturally produced nitrogen. Correct. Because industrial effluents, when it comes to the burning of the fossil fuels, etc., amount of nitrogen produced is very high through fertilizers, etc. When we talk about the natural production of nitrogen, it is nitrogen in the atmosphere is largely inert in nature. So only when you have the nitrogen fixing microbes in the soil, only when, let's suppose, you have lightning and thunder which fixes some amount of nitrogen, those being the only natural sources in the nitrogen cycle. So anthropogenic production is much higher. Excess nitrogen in water can cause lack of availability of fresh water. When you have excess nitrogen production, then what happens? You have eutrophication, which eventually leads to harmful algal bloom. Eutrophication leading to harmful algal bloom. So in the case of harmful algal bloom, whatever fresh water is there, that gets destroyed. So here availability of fresh water reduces. This is correct. Colombo Declaration, signed in 2019, seeks to reduce nitrogen waste by half by 2030, not by 2040. Okay. Colombo Declaration was regarding the nitrogenous wastes which are emitted. So here, how many of the above statements are correct? The answer is B, that is only 2. Then, consider the following statements regarding Global Cooling Pledge. Global Cooling Pledge is an initiative by UAE launched during the COP28, Conference of Parties 28. So here, it is about reducing the amount of emissions carried out in the cooling sector, because even in the cooling sector you have a lot of emissions. Cooling sector means you have cold storages, refrigerants, air conditioners at homes, etc. So those particular cooling events or cooling processes, they use a lot of they emit a lot of greenhouse gases in the process. So that greenhouse gas emission also is a significant factor in global warming. So in order to curb that, bring that under control, and in order to accelerate the ratification of the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol by 2024, you had the Global Cooling Pledge. So it is a joint initiative of India and the EU? No. India, by the way, is not a part of this Global Cooling Pledge because India has got its own India Cooling Action Plan, which is much more ambitious in nature. It aims at reducing cooling related emissions across all the sectors, correct. It also commits towards ratification of the Kigali Amendment across the globe by 2024. Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. This amendment was signed in 2016, and this talked about the reduction in the utility of HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons. These HFCs, they don't deplete the ozone layer, but they are a very potent greenhouse gas. Okay. So they cause a lot of warming. So that is why Kigali Amendment seeks to phase out HFC here. So here, how many of the above statements are correct? The answer is B, that is only 2. Now, which of the following is the closest living relative of the dodo whose primordial germ cell will be utilized for de-extinction? So dodo is an extinct species of bird which has been in use due to the efforts by the scientists in order to bring them back to life. So here, Nicobar pigeon is one of the closest relatives, and the various different cells, germ cells of the Nicobar pigeon will be utilized for the de-extinction process, bringing it back to life. Now, coming to the final question. With reference to ethanol 100, E100 fuel, consider the following statements. E100 can be used in conventional gasoline engines without any modification. Absolutely not. You need modifications. For ethanol engines, you need flex engines for that. Normal petrol engines, they will have a knocking effect and they can be susceptible to breakdown as well. Ethanol used in E100 is produced from non-food biomass sources like crop residues and wood wastes. So, that is correct. So, it can be used, it can be generated by food waste as well, but overall generated from non-food biomass. So that there is no issue of food scarcity and food security in the era of burgeoning population, that is ensured. So, this is correct. Then, compared to gasoline, E100 has lower energy density but a higher octane rating. This is correct. E100 basically has lower energy density, which means that there can be an overall impact to be felt in the, let's suppose, mileage or energy efficiency. So, that is a point of concern for E100, but higher octane rating means efficiency can be gained if you utilize it in the proper combustion manner. So, this is correct. So, here you will have B, that is only 2. 2 of the statements here are correct. Now, the last question. Consider the following statements regarding megafaunal dispersal syndrome. What is this megafaunal dispersal syndrome? So, megafauna basically means the large species of organisms such as elephants for that matter. So, these megafaunal species, they are very important and vital in spreading and allowing the pollination of the various seeds of the trees, because they travel through large distances and they help in dispersal of the seeds, allowing for the germination of them. So, megafaunal dispersal syndrome refers to the ecological phenomena where large animals are responsible for the dispersal of seeds from various plant species. Correct. The extinction of many megafauna species has significant impact on the plant species that relied on them for seed dispersal. So, see, when you have megafaunal species which are undergoing or experiencing any threat or extinction process, then many of the trees which would rely on them for carrying out a germination in far off places, they get impacted. So, as a result of that, their population is at risk. So, this is correct and is a correct explanation of statement 1. So, here answer is A, that is statement 1 and 2 are correct. That brings us to the end of the discussion. I hope you would have attempted these questions with appropriate utility of logic at that point of time. More important than what is the marks that you have secured, you have to focus upon the fact that where you are committing mistakes. Mistakes can be committed only because of certain reasons, maybe lack of content, lack of concentration. Lack of concentration makes you commit silly mistakes. You have to eliminate that first. So, take a look at the questions where you are committing those silly mistakes. Try to understand when is it that your concentration generally goes on the back seat. Work on that. You need to get into the habit of sitting for those 2.5 hours. Generally, the paper is of 2 hours, but you have to make yourself adaptable for those 2.5 hours of maximum concentration in that time period. And then lack of content, wherever you felt that this is a piece of information I did not know, add on to your revision list. And in the final days before the prelims, use that for revision. We meet again on the 16th when we will be discussing the question paper and we will have a live discussion of the prelims question paper. Before that, I hope you are covering and revising through our initiative of the last lap on the YouTube, where revision of the various different topics are done in a brief gist. We will carry out the revision of environment ecology and various aspects associated with environment ecology. We have covered the current affairs portion, but the static portion is something that we will cover on 13th. So, catch you up on YouTube till then. Take care of yourself, revise properly, ensure that the confidence is not shattered, and all the best for your exam. Thank you.